Chapter 905, Bribed with a Single Meal. If Small Tower had facial expressions, it would currently definitely be dumbfounded. After a moment of speechlessness, it finally said, "This descendant of the White Tiger's injury most likely is a brain injury." It really thought of itself as a cat. It was a bit of a retard. "Little cat, come over quickly. I also have a ball." Li Weiwei picked up the ball of wool on the ground, and then gave it a toss. The fat cat could not restrain itself and pounced over, but then became so furious it erupted into a loud series of meowing, feeling incredible regret. Why was it that it had completely no resistance against woolen, ball-like objects? Ling Han smiled, and said, "Fat cat, let's be friends. In the future, you can eat as much of the barbecued meat here as you like until you're full, how about it? Though you can snatch it, I can still choose not to take it out. Furthermore, I could still choose to eat elsewhere as well." If it had been before it had tasted the delicious food inside the Black Tower, the fat cat would have naturally disdained this offer as something beneath its contempt. "Are you kidding me? Just giving me some food, and you want to be friends with me? In your dreams." But now, it merely had to think about the food inside the Black Tower, and it would already be drooling. It had stood guard here early on today, wasn't it precisely because it wanted to snatch the food? It could not help but feel troubled. As the White Tiger, its pride compelled it to be more strong-willed, and not submit for the sake of mere food, but as a glutton, it could not resist such temptation. "Isn't it just a friendship? I'm not seeking any benefits from you," Ling Han cajoled smilingly. "Meow." The fat cat nodded, and felt that Ling Han's words were very reasonable. In any case, there was no need for it to sacrifice anything in exchange. Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner were both shocked. One had to know that this cat had been described as incomparably frightening by Zhang Deman, and was an existence that could definitely not be trifled with. But now, it actually agreed to befriend Ling Han. They were practically dumbfounded. Most importantly, it was because this White Tiger was really too young, and would easily be deceived. Otherwise, if was a cunning guy like Rabbit, just try and see if it would be fooled. Ling Han took out more food, not just barbecued meat, but also other kinds of delicious delicacies. With thousand-year-old spirit herbs as supplementary ingredients, in a small world, this would be considered an incredibly extravagant meal, but in the immortal realm, it was more ordinary. That was because the lifespan of immortals was really too long. Moreover, powerful forces could separate out an area to be used for the cultivation of spirit herbs, and after a few thousand years, they similarly could harvest a considerable amount of thousand-year-old spirit herbs every year. However, in terms of numbers, it could not compare in any way to the production rate of the Black Tower at all. Hence, even Li Weiwei, a daughter of the left minister, could not help but gasp in surprise when she saw how extravagant Ling Han was. Could it be that a small world was so wealthy? Naturally, everyone ate this meat to their heart's content. Though the fat cat belonged to the Tsundere category, that was a natural temperament induced by the pride deserving of a divine beast. But as it feasted, it also relaxed, and lay down lazily on its back, allowing Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner to rub its tummy, completely at ease. It was a majestic descendant of a divine beast, yet was actually bought by a meal. How disgraceful. Ling Han summoned the gold-seeking rat as well, but did not allow Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner realize it. They only thought that he had brought it out from inside his rooms. The moment it saw the rat, the fat cat immediately reacted on instinct. Abruptly, it turned over and got to its paws, intending to do its rightful duty. Meanwhile, the gold-seeking rat was completely frozen as it flopped onto the ground with a paw, pretending to be dead. It was really scared half to death. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "This is my pet, so don't scare it." Only then did the fat cat lick its claws in an aloof manner. Since it had agreed to a friendship, it did have to give Ling Han some face. The gold-seeking rat scrambled onto Ling Han's shoulder with a xiao. One of its tiny claws pointed at the fat cat, and it squeaked loudly, trying to say, "This big guy wants to eat me, master, you must give me justice." Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner clicked their tongues in wonder. It was not uncommon for a demonic beast to have intelligence. In truth, the majority of demonic beasts that had reached the shattering void tier would even be capable of speech, and those that had advanced into a mortal level could even take human form. But, it was really rare to see such a cute baby rat, causing their beautiful eyes to light up as they fought each other over it. This scared the gold-seeking rat so badly it began playing dead again as it thought that these two women wanted to eat it. In the time it took for this meal, Ling Han had established a business alliance with the two women. The two of them would be in charge of opening the channel of sales, and he would be responsible for supply. The profits would be divided 50-50 between them, wherein Ling Han would earn one half, whereas Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner would share equally their half of the profits. Li Weiwei was in high spirits. This was an important opportunity that could change her image. In the eyes of her old father, she was definitely a young mistress that only knew to spend money, but who didn't have their own pride. Li Weiwei wanted to prove that she was not merely a rich young lady that could only depend on the benefits of having a good father. She was filled with fighting spirit, and quickly departed with Ji Yuner, impatient to go out and do something great. Meanwhile, Ling Han strolled to the library of the Northern Institution. Since it was a library, it naturally contained innumerable books, which included cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemical techniques, formation techniques, and so on. But, the academy would not allow you to obtain them for nothing. You would have to work hard to earn academic credits to exchange for these things. Of course, that applied for immortal-level students. Secret techniques meant for the shattering void tier were completely not in the consideration of the academy, and all students of the academy could peruse these techniques freely. Thus, Ling Han did not have to worry about not having academic credits and not even having the right to enter into the library. Academic credits? I would have to consider obtaining them in future, Ling Han mused. Unless he took some higher up of the academy as master, he would have to think of his own ways to obtain immortal-level cultivation techniques. They could be auctioned off at an auction house for true origin stones, but the cultivation techniques that could be obtained from an auction house would definitely be incredibly exorbitantly priced. Even if he opened the channel of sales for the food inside the Black Tower, he could not possibly compete in wealth with the various rich and powerful people in the imperial capital. Or at least, before his alchemy prospered, he could only think of means to earn academic credits and exchange them for cultivation techniques from the library. He did not want to take anyone as master. After ascending to the position of monarch, his personality had also changed, and he now had the pride as befitting of an emperor. In the whole world, who would be capable of becoming master to an emperor? He arrived at the entrance to the library, and saw an old man seated at the door. His whole head was covered with white hair, covering him so fully that even his face could barely be seen. His upper body was continuously swaying to and fro ever so little, and he seemed to be sleeping very deeply. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then walked around him as he headed in. A walking stick stretched out, blocking his path. "Kid, are you planning on stealing a book?" This old man suddenly raised his head. "I would not dare. I merely wanted to borrow books to read," Ling Han explained. The old man cast a meaningful look at Ling Han for a while, then said, "Print your palm on that rock, and you would naturally know how many levels you may enter and what kind of secret techniques you can flip through. Thank you for your guidance, senior." Ling Han nodded, and looked at the stone pillar ahead of him. It was about half the height of a man, and there was a jade stone on top. It was only slightly bigger than the size of a palm. He stretched out a hand and pressed down. He instantly felt a numbing in his consciousness, which immediately returned to normal. If it was not for the fact that his spirit was incomparably sensitive, he could not have possibly felt it at all. Seeing the surprised expression on Ling Han's face, the old man could not help but give a "ee" and asked, "You were actually able to sense a bit of your spirit being drawn out?" Ling Han's expression suddenly changed drastically. The spirit was incredibly important, and now, a sliver of his spirit had actually been drawn out? "Don't worry, it will not have any effect on you," the old man said, smiling. Then, waving his hand, he said, "Go in." After seeing Ling Han vanished, he could not help but mumble to himself, "This kid's spirit is actually so sensitive. This has indeed made me feel like cherishing his talent. He would be worth observing for a while." Chapter 906, Coming Up with an Idea. Ling Han could only wander on the first floor of the library, but the books there were all accessible to him, without any restrictions on reading. Obviously, these were techniques and arts below immortal level. Ling Han was also not in a hurry to find the alchemical arts. He slowly flipped through the books as he walked along. The origin power cultivation technique which he was currently cultivating was by no means a top-notch one. If he wanted to rely on the extreme yang technique to attain the strength of an additional 4 stars outside of origin power, it would be tough. He might have to stop at the strength of 18 or 19 stars. Therefore, he intended to practice a different cultivation technique. Changing to a different cultivation technique would inevitably have a considerable impact on his advancement into higher cultivation levels, but was absolutely necessary in order to charge towards the strength limit of 20 stars. The Scarlet Heaven Academy, or at least the Northern Institution, was very generous. There was a lot of techniques here, all complete with 10 levels of cultivation and usable to cultivate up to the peak of the Shattering Void tier. After reaching this step, one could apply at the academy to learn the elite's method of cultivation, such as instructions and technique applications for charging towards the Mountain River tier. After stepping into the Mountain River tier, the rest would depend on the individual. This was also the unchanging and eternal truth of the martial arts world. Practicing cultivation would always be your own personal matter. If you couldn't understand any obscure theory, then no one would be able to explain it clearly to you. You could only think about it yourself, which might take a few days or a few years before you finally comprehended it. There was also a possibility that you would be stuck at this hurdle for a lifetime. It was practically fatal for a cultivator to develop a habit of relying on others. After searching for a long time, Ling Han did not find a technique most suitable for himself. While pushing one's strength to 9 stars, 10 stars, or even 11 stars of Shattering Void tier was relatively simple, breaking through to 12 or 13 stars was extremely difficult. An improvement by 1 star was akin to reaching for the heavens. After a moment's contemplation, he suddenly felt a burst of inspiration, and thought to himself, "Now, I am complete with 6 attributes. What if I practice 6 different cultivation techniques and combine them?" With such a thought, he suddenly felt an uncontrollable excitement. He searched high and low for 6 techniques of similar level and comprising of 6 attributes, which belonged to the category of the 5 elements, 1 and thunder, and then memorized each of them. The materials here couldn't be taken out. Unlike traditional books, these techniques were inscribed on bones. Some were beast bones, and some were even human bones, and holding them was slightly hair-raising. As the fingers touched them, the bones glowed, and the techniques were manifested. They were all seen as interweaving secret patterns, and not real words. There was also a chart of veins, which described the route of flow of origin power and certain concealed acupuncture points in the human body that needed to be unblocked. So there are such things. This truly opened Ling Han's eyes. He came from a small world, and even if he had lived 2 lifetimes, this was something he couldn't change. Given the limitations of the environment in a small world, he had only studied 2 types of 10-level techniques. One was from the sea race, and another one from the 5 sections. These techniques could at best allow him to cultivate his strength to the level of 11 stars of Shattering Void tier, still 2 stars away from reaching the limit of origin power. Ling Han was utterly engrossed in going through the techniques. He was already standing at the pinnacle of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. These techniques were just a reference for him, not a difficult problem that would constantly drive him up the wall in frustration. He couldn't help but be extremely delighted. He was confident that he could break through and attain the strength of 13 stars of origin power after integrating the 6 techniques. There was no need to worry about body arts. The 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was absolutely awesome, enough for him to reach the utmost limit of brute force. After spending just less than half a day, he closed his eyes in satisfaction. Then, after exhaling a long breath, he revealed a smile. He put the bone books back in place before heading off in search of alchemical arts. Found it. Ling Han found an ancient scripture. This one was an actual book. Flipping through it, he saw that it recorded the techniques to refine level 10 alchemical pills, and described the effects of some level 10 alchemical pills on cultivators of Mountain River tier. For example, replenishing spirit pill. Ling Han wasn't greedy. He decided to only work on the recipe for this alchemical pill for the time being. He memorized the pill's recipe. Was a simple matter as long as one had a memory good enough. This wouldn't be a problem for most cultivators. The difficulty lay in extracting the patterns from the medicinal ingredients and weaving them together during the process of concocting the pills. It was too easy to make mistakes. A moment of inattentiveness, and the incorrect interweaving of patterns would cause the whole concoction to be completely destroyed. Therefore, this pill recipe's record of the ingredients was only a simple half a page, while the method of interweaving the patterns used up full 18 pages, and this was just a level 10 alchemical pill. The god-level alchemical pills were even more terrifying. One whole book would only record the recipe of one alchemical pill, and this book would be outrageously voluminous. Fortunately, the lifespan of immortals was long enough, so they would have enough time to learn many more pill recipes. Otherwise, someone with Shattering Void tier's lifespan would only be able to study a dozen or so god-level pill recipes. After spending another half a day, Ling Han finally closed the book and shut his eyes, digesting the information on this particular pill recipe. This might just be a recipe for replenishing spirit pill, but since it would have certain effects on cultivators of the Mountain River tier, its recipe was naturally complicated, and could be regarded as the recipe for a pseudo-god-level pill. For Ling Han, who was merely in the Shattering Void tier, refining it would be quite difficult. The strength of my spirit has been greatly improved by the reincarnation tea. Furthermore, with the cultivation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, the strength of my spirit is stable enough to refine this replenishing spirit pill, Ling Han thought to himself confidently. However, alchemy is a process of trial and error. From failure to success, it might take a few times, or possibly dozens of times. I only possess 2 true origin stones. I am not sure how many ingredients I can buy. He put the ancient book back in its original place, and then turned around to leave. He planned to go out of the academy to buy the ingredients for refining the replenishing spirit pill. When Ling Han came to the library's main entrance, the white-haired elderly man glanced at him, and when Ling Han walked out through the doors, the old man suddenly said, "I am surnamed Su, you can call me Old Man Su. Do drop by when you have the time, I like chatting with young people." Ling Han was startled. He turned around and slightly bowed at the old man, and said, "Yes, senior." Although the old man's aura wasn't conspicuous, and he looked like any ordinary old man, would there be any useless person in the Scarlet Heaven Academy? His whole person exuded a lofty and unyielding disposition, but it was different from being haughty and arrogant. Old Man Su waved his hand at Ling Han. He stood there until Ling Han turned and walked away. After Ling Han's figure disappeared, Old Man Su murmured, "This kid actually intends to practice 6 different cultivation techniques. Not many people know that it would be impossible to charge towards the ultimate strength of origin power by merely practicing one cultivation technique, but a cultivator from a small world actually chanced upon the solution by chance. This is really interesting. This is certainly luck, but luck is also a part of one's strength. Had it not been, then I wouldn't have fallen into such circumstances. This is my destiny, my luck. Perhaps, the regrets of this old man could be made up by this kid. Just as Old Man Su said the last sentence, his gaze suddenly sparkled, and a frightening aura surrounded his whole body. However, a black-colored chain also appeared simultaneously, and tightly wrapped itself around Elder Su's chest, causing him to cough up blood incessantly. 4 galaxies had actually appeared behind him, and each of them was of the same size. Had anyone seen this, they would be absolutely shocked to the core. Who would have thought that an elderly man guarding the library in the Northern Institution was actually a peerless elite whose cultivation level had reached the pinnacle of perfection level of the heavenly body tier? Chapter 907, Pill Concoction. After leaving the library, Ling Han immediately went out of the academy, and strolled around the imperial capital in search of a pharmacy. The practice of cultivation would always be inseparable from alchemical pills, but the concocting of alchemical pills could only be done by an alchemist. This limited the number of pharmacies available. Ling Han had visited a few, but found that the scope of these pharmacies was too limited. The alchemical pills put up for sale were of heaven grade and below, so it would be impossible for him to purchase the ingredients required for the concoction of replenishing spirit pill there. Seeing that the payment there was settled using gold and silver, one would already know the level was too low indeed. After looking for a while, Ling Han finally found a pharmacy with a large shop front and a big signage. He had yet to go in, but saw that there were 4 guards standing at the door, each with the cultivation level of the Shattering Void tier. He knew it now, inside this pharmacy, there would definitely be something that he needed. Sure enough, the alchemical pills and medicinal herbs here were very complete, and the highest grade alchemical pill even reached the 7th layer of the immortal level. What kind of concept was this? That was for the consumption of elites who had attained the higher levels of the Sun-Moon tier. If Ling Han was to consume one now, his body would explode, and he would die. This also applied to the true origin stone. The condensed spiritual chi of the heaven and earth contained within it was too concentrated. If he were to refine it now, he would only be courting death, and it would do nothing to upgrade his cultivation level. Therefore, now this cultivation treasure could only be used as currency. Ling Han was not in the least reluctant to part with it. As the saying went, you have to lose some to gain some. As long as he would be able to concoct replenishing spirit pill, it would help him generate a lot more true origin stones in return. Fortunately, the purchasing power of true origin stones was considerably good. A standard-size true origin stone that would be about 500 grams could buy 5 replenishing spirit pills, or as much raw materials as adequate for 10 portions. 10 portions were not only able to produce 10 replenishing spirit pills, rather, each portion could produce up to 5 pills. It was calculated according to the size of the standard alchemy furnace, taking into consideration the difficulty of interweaving the patterns. This was the standard. However, few alchemists could refine all the ingredients in the furnace. 5 were the limit, and being able to refine 3 would already be above the standard. Taking into account the cost, as long as 10 portions of the ingredients could be refined, merely 10% success rate of pill concoction was sufficient to earn back the cost. From this point of view, alchemy was a profitable business. The same was true in the immortal realm and small world alike. It was a pity becoming an alchemist was too difficult, and an alchemist with a high success rate of pill concoction was even rarer. After learning that Ling Han wanted to concoct the replenishing spirit pill, the staff was very enthusiastic, and said that if Ling Han was successful in concocting said pill, they could buy it, but not at the price of 1 true origin stone for 5 pills. It would be 1 true origin stone in exchange for 7 pills instead. They would have to earn something, right? Shattering Void tier was definitely the largest group of cultivators in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, so the replenishing spirit pill was very popular, and there was no need to fear that it wouldn't all sell even if there was a large number available. On the contrary, this kind of alchemical pill had always provided a small profit but rapid turnover, and was more effective in attracting customers. Sometimes, it would even be sold at a loss. Ling Han did not care about this. He not only bought ready-made ingredients, but also seeds. Having such a good thing like the Black Tower, it would be silly not to make full use of it. Soon, he would have an endless supply of raw ingredients, and no longer need to buy them here again. Moreover, the replenishing spirit pill was in the end merely a level 10 alchemical pill. Most of the ingredients used would only require 100 years of growth, and only a few of the ingredients would require twice as long. For the Black Tower, it would only take 2 months. Ling Han had spent 2 true origin stones. One was to buy 10 portions of the ingredients, and the other one was used to buy plenty of seeds. After returning to the academy, he began to bury his head in concocting the pills. He naturally had no difficulty in purifying the ingredients, but he took a deep breath next. The next step was a crucial one, concocting the pill itself. Open up the furnace. Within the Black Tower, Ling Han didn't have to worry about the extreme temperature of the flame. Inside it, he was a true god. Boom, the flames were raging, and Ling Han began to put the ingredients into the alchemy furnace. Refined with true fire, the energy in the medicinal ingredients began to volatilize, and the patterns were intertwined. Ling Han acted, reorganizing these patterns to meet the requirements of replenishing spirit pill. It was so that the pill would give the desired effect. He kept on putting in the medicinal ingredients, while the veins were also becoming more and more complicated. With the sound of a bang, Ling Han sighed. The furnace exploded. He had failed. As an alchemy emperor, how long had it been since he last had a taste of failing a concoction? Ling Han couldn't help but think of the past. He was constantly swimming in the ocean of the path of alchemy. Explosion of the furnace was common. How would there be an alchemy emperor in the later years without so many failures first? Instead of immediately starting to refine the second batch of ingredients, he closed his eyes and recalled the previous attempt in detail, trying to ascertain the cause of his failure. If he couldn't figure it out, then even if he were to attempt concoction 100 times, he would still fail 100 times. After a long time, Ling Han began the process of refining for the second time. Boom! He failed again. However, if someone else was present, they would find that Ling Han's failure this time came later than the last attempt. In other words, he was making progress. After summarizing his failure, he made another attempt. Boom! This was the third failure, but no matter, there was improvement. At the fourth attempt, he still failed. For the fifth attempt, he still failed. Then, the sixth attempt also ended in failure. But, the corners of Ling Han's lips revealed a smile. He had lost track of time, and fully devoted himself to concocting the pills. He was confident enough that he would succeed in the seventh attempt. Come! He was extremely cautious, his hands were constantly moving, exerting a strong force, conditioning the patterns of the medicinal ingredients, and making the different ingredients resonate with each other. He was interweaving the patterns in such a way to give the effects that a single medicinal ingredient could never produce. After half a day, Ling Han's expression was solemn as the most crucial time had arrived. Open! He humphed lightly, and his hands instantly began moving innumerable times. 3 blazes of flames burst forth. It was 3 fire guide, a secret technique of his own creation. He suddenly opened the lid, and saw that there were 5 jade green round pills in the furnace, but with the opening of the lid, 4 pills shattered to pieces, leaving only the last one leaping about. It seemed to have a life of its own, attempting to escape. Ling Han quickly took hold of it, and went out of the Black Tower, intending to experience the pill tribulation of a level 10 alchemical pill. But, as he stood in the yard, he didn't see any signs of thunderclouds all along. Could it be that because it was refined in the Black Tower, it was disregarded by the heavens and earth? Meow! The cries of a very angry cat were heard. A big fat cat threw itself over, unsheathing its claws to scratch Ling Han. Hey, 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 are we not good friends? Ling Han quickly dodged. Meow. 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 The fat cat was screaming incessantly. It said that it has waited for you for 7 days, but you have not appeared. Where was the meat you promised? Said the small tower. Ling Han's mouth slightly twitched. You can even talk to cats? What am I not capable of? Small tower responded in a tsundere tone. Ling Han was dumbfounded. 7 days have actually passed. He grabbed the fat cat, and said, all right, I will treat you to some meat. Please stay your hand, no, I mean claws. Otherwise, how am I going to make you a meal? The fat cat finally stopped attacking Ling Han. It sat on its hind legs, bearing an aloof and proud expression. Humans, you all are the slaves of this royal cat. Chapter 908, Obvious Progress. Ling Han made a huge meal for the fat cat and himself. Naturally, gold-seeking rat joined them and ate to its heart's content. Looking at the cat and rat being together like partners in crime, Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This was way too harmonious one. This thought had yet to pass when the fat cat pounced onto gold-seeking rat. This little mouse actually dared to sneak a look at its meat. This scared the latter so badly that its 4 limbs became stiff, while its tail went straight as a ramrod. It then lay on the ground, playing dead. This trick was time-tested. It used to amuse the ladies. The likes of Zhu Xian'er and Helian Sun Zuanli Hunyo would drool looking at itself, causing the little one to feel extremely insecure. Fortunately, that girl who was a more gluttonous disaster than itself had already left them. However, its happiness had barely lasted a few days when another ferocious fellow came along again. Why did Master always have these scary monsters that would frighten this little one by his side? Ling Han couldn't help bursting into laughter, but then the sound of pa was heard from the courtyard door. He went over to open the door, and saw Li Weiwei standing in the doorway with her hands on her waist, bearing an expression as if she was going to gobble someone up. Stupid blockhead, where have you been the past 7 days? Do you know that I have been coming here to look for you every day until my legs have become sore? You are just my follower, yet you dare to make me run around looking for you, not to mention making a few wasted trips. Are you trying to rebel? She rattled on with her complaint, showing the bossy nature of the crafty and unruly young mistress that she was. Ling Han quickly raised his hands in surrender and smiled. My sincere apologies, something had cropped up a few days ago. Aren't I back now? Right, you are so excited. Has the sales channel for the ingredients been opened? Obviously. With me paving the way, what problems could there be? Li Weiwei harumphed. All the ingredients you gave me already sold out. However, because it was merely for them to try, we didn't earn even a single true origin stone. Ling Han nodded. Had it not been for Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner, ordinary people wouldn't have been able to send food into the households of influential officials. However, since they had eaten the food, it would now be his turn to have the final say. He took out a lot of food and passed it to Li Weiwei, who was getting very excited. Soon, there would be true origin stones recorded in their accounts. Although this amount wasn't much, she had earned it by her own hands, which made her feel exhilarated beyond measure. Ling Han nevertheless shook his head. Such a business couldn't be maintained too long. There was no other way. How could he explain the origin of these ingredients? The capacity of a spatial spirit tool was limited. If he were able to endlessly supply these foods, he would certainly be suspected. After all, these foods were extremely delicious. It would be difficult to guarantee that no one would be curious. Although Li Weiwei's identity was very noble, Ling Han was just a fallen emperor. To be honest, had he not still retained this identity, which cultivator of Mountain River tier would have held him in high regard? So what if you were bullied, insulted, or even killed? This was just quick money. Its purpose was to accumulate true origin stones while refining the replenishing spirit pill without a hitch. This was the correct path to make a fortune. Otherwise, there was no way that one would be able to catch up with the earnings from the sale of replenishing spirit pills from a single furnace, even if one was to press on with the food business for a whole month. After sending Li Weiwei off, Ling Han began to concoct alchemical pills, but this time it wasn't done within Black Tower, but within the courtyard itself. The big fat cat, having eaten and drunk its fill, was lying on its stomach on the wall of the courtyard, bored. But, with it there, likely no one would dare to come and disturb Ling Han. They ought to know that this white cat was raised by the head of Scarlet Heaven Academy, an elite of the heavenly body tier. Would they dare to provoke him? Concocting pills outside of the Black Tower was slightly more difficult. After all, the control of the fire's temperature was no longer as he pleased, but Ling Han still made progress. Pennsylvania, pa, two sounds rang out when he opened the furnace's lid. This time, only 3 alchemical pills burst to pieces. 2 alchemical pills were concocted successfully. One shouldn't look at it as merely getting just one more pill. This was actually a great improvement. If it was any other alchemist, it might take them months or even years to obtain such results. But, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor, and level 10 alchemical pill was still within his ability, so such progress was not at all unusual. However, there was still no tribulation brought about by the concoction of alchemical pill. Could it be that the level here is so high that even a level 10 alchemical pill wouldn't trigger a tribulation? Ling Han guessed. He couldn't think of another possibility. If there is no pill concoction triggered tribulation, then so be it. Let's do this again. In his 9th attempt, he harvested 3 alchemical pills from the furnace, while on the 10th attempt, he harvested 4. He ran out of ingredients at that point. If I could refine one more furnace's portion, then perhaps I could achieve perfection, Ling Han thought to himself. He had already harvested 10 replenishing spirit pills. Even if he could only exchange 7 pills for 1 true origin stone, he had already earned back his investment. The other true origin stone had been used to purchase more seeds. Alchemy is still the most profitable business. I had chosen the right profession. Ling Han smiled as he went out. He intended to sell the 7 pills and buy ingredients. This time, he actually spent another 3 days, so engrossed in alchemy that he didn't even have time to cultivate any techniques. The lack of manpower really makes me feel that time is not enough. Ling Han sighed. Now that he had to start from scratch with alchemy and martial arts, it would seem that he had to also make a choice, and choose the main area to focus on. If he were to try to manage both, he really wouldn't be able to handle it. I'll walk the road of martial arts. Ling Han quickly made up his mind. No matter how glorious alchemy was, it would merely act to serve martial arts. The respect that alchemists had received was also accorded to them by cultivators. If an elite cultivator had no respect for you, could you manage to beat him up? Therefore, at the end of the day, making one's own strength as powerful as possible was truly the path to dominance. He went to the big pharmacy from previously, and offered the 7 replenishing spirit pills for sale. The shop assistant didn't know that it was Ling Han's first time refining, and merely thought that he was a veteran. He could not help but shake his head. Small-time alchemists like you should find some backing. Although a share of your earnings would be taken, there is also protection. It's unlike no, if there is even a slight mistake, you can't even get back your cost. The shop assistant kindly advised Ling Han then. After all, alchemists were a rare breed, and an alchemist who could concoct the replenishing spirit pill was also not that simple. Ling Han just smiled, and allowed the other party to give him 10 more portions of ingredients, which he kept in the Black Tower and left. Oh. As Ling Han walked out of the pharmacy, Luo Lai just came from around the corner. He stared at Ling Han's back, and could not help but feel odd. He thought that Ling Han was merely a lowlife from a small world. What was he doing here? He walked into the pharmacy, called over the shop assistant who had previously served Ling Han, and asked, that person earlier, what did he come here for? The shop assistant, being aware that this was the young master of the Luo clan, didn't dare to not answer. Besides, this wasn't anything shameful. The customer sold 7 replenishing spirit pilsel, and in addition. What? Luo Lai immediately interrupted the other party's words, his eyes shining, and said, "Are you sure?" The shop assistant nodded. Could he even make a mistake about this? Luo Lai immediately smirked. At the academy strictly prohibited its students to sell the alchemical pills they were granted, as well as techniques, martial arts, and the likes. Ha ha ha, he had been cracking his head as he was unable to find any weakness of Ling Han, but had not expected the other party to present one himself. It was just that, how did the other party obtain 7 replenishing spirit pills? This thought merely flashed across Luo Lai's mind for a moment, and he immediately discarded it. As long as Ling Han had sold the alchemical pills bestowed to him by the academy, then it would be a serious offense. He was so excited that he didn't even bother to buy any medicine. He turned around and directly returned home. The irony of it was that if he had queried the clerk more, he would be able to deduce that those replenishing spirit pills were concocted by Ling Han. Of course, he might still obstinately persist in going about things the wrong way, and firmly refuse to believe the possibility that a young cultivator from a small world could actually practice both alchemy and martial arts. Chapter 909, Black Market. Luo Lai hurriedly returned home, and raced to find Luo Ba. He knew he was not as clever as his elder brother. If he allowed Luo Ba to handle things, they would cause the greatest strike to Ling Han. "Brother! Brother!" he called out, panting heavily. The descendants of important nobles like them would not usually remain in the academy. The conditions for cultivation were even better in their own home, and they merely had to go to the academy once every 5 days to attend a lecture. He recounted what he had previously witnessed. When Luo Ba heard all he had to say, he immediately erupted into great laughter. Ling Han, this time you've fallen into my hands. Just see how I will deal with you." "Brother, what do you plan to do?" Luo Lai quickly asked. He, too, bore a deep-seated hatred towards Ling Han. Luo Ba thought for a moment, then said, "A thief must be caught red-handed. Have someone stand guard, and the next time Ling Han appears, we'll catch him together with his loot. Brother, that guy might have seen me. Perhaps he would switch to another place to sell off the alchemical pills next time." Luo Lai was still quite clever. Luo Ba nodded, and said, "We'll prepare for both eventualities. We'll wait until just before this month's monthly assessment, and if we still have yet to catch him red-handed, then we'll directly tell on him. Anyways, with that shop assistant as a witness, Ling Han would similarly not be able to escape punishment." He hummed for a while, then said, "For this matter, we have to request 17th Clan Elder's help. He is an elder by rotation of the Northern Institution, and with his cooperation, it would not be difficult to execute Ling Han for this crime." "That's right, he has to die," Luo Lai exclaimed with bloodshot eyes. He, the honorable young master of the Luo clan, had actually been beaten onto the ground and forced into submission. What great humiliation was this? As long as Ling Han was still alive, he would not be able to sleep soundly at night. Luo Ba smirked coldly. Merely the sale of alchemical pills was not enough to cause Ling Han to lose his life. After all, the latter was a 4-star genius, and that was something rarely seen in history. However, rules were still rules. With 17th Elder stepping out to exert pressure and turning the small matter into a big one, it would be enough to expel Ling Han from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Furthermore, without the backing of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, what would a little cultivator of the Shattering Void tier from a small world be worth? A careless stomp and he would be dead. To actually dare to steal the limelight from me. This is the price. Luo Ba's eyes shone with a cold light. The first one was Ling Han, and the second was Ma Xing. He would deal with both of them. Unfortunately, though the power of the Cheng clan was not on par with the Luo clan, Cheng Haofei was not someone that he could just deal with as he desired, so he could only spare him. Otherwise, he'd eliminate all three. Meanwhile, Luo Lai was satisfied with just dealing with Ling Han. He snickered maliciously, and was impatient to see the scene in which this great enemy of his would be trampled underneath his foot. When Ling Han returned to the academy, he just happened to bump into Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner. The first batch of food ingredients was completely sold out, and had been sold off for a total of 36 true origin stones. Ling Han gained half the share, which was 18 true origin stones, whereas Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner each earned 9 true origin stones. In truth, this could actually be considered a great sum of money. One had to know that even if Ling Han and Ji Yuner were two of the top 3 prodigies, they were each only given 2 true origin stones from the academy, so it could be seen how valuable they were. Li Weiwei was even more pleased. Although she definitely did not lack these 9 true origin stones, they were earned with her own effort, which made her extremely happy. Oh, right. You've already missed 2 classes with Big Sister Shui. Big Sister Shui is very angry, so you can just wait to be killed. Li Weiwei said, delighting in his misery. Cooperating with Ling Han to earn money and being unhappy with Ling Han were 2 different things. To mess with Ling Han was a thought that had never vanished from her mind. Ling Han sighed. He had been busy with concocting alchemical pills these few days, and he still had to concoct alchemical pills for a few more days. No matter what, he would have to finish off the medicinal ingredients he had just bought, right? Furthermore, for the sake of earning money, he could only concoct alchemical pills. Who asked him to be born without a father who was the left minister, or a mother that was the right minister? After the 2 women enjoyed a meal, and played around with the big fat cat, they took a whole spatial spirit tool's worth of food ingredients each and left. They did not ask how Ling Han's spatial spirit tool was so big, and how much stuff was actually stored inside. After all, neither of them was foolish. Ling Han once again began to concoct pills. In 200 years of his last life, he had been an alchemist, and this identity had seeped deep into his bones. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed very quickly. This was level 10 alchemical pill, and even Ling Han would not be able to speed up the concoction time by much. Concocting a whole furnace's worth of pills, no matter what, would need at least half a day, thus, after concocting these 10 batches, another 5 days passed. However, his rewards were colossal. Aside from the beginning 2 furnaces, which only had 4 successful pills each, the following 8 attempts had reached the perfect standard of 5 pills respectively. This was how the alchemy emperor should be. Ling Han was also very satisfied. This time, he had a total of 48 replenishing spirit pills, and even if 7 pills could only be sold off for a single true origin stone, he could still earn 7 true origin stones, which was 6 times his costs. Great profit, this was really great profit. Of course, this was only limited to an alchemy emperor like him. In the case of an ordinary alchemist, it would be considered quite impressive if they could only earn 20 to 30% profit, just like Ling Han's first attempt of concocting this pill. He did not plan to head to the pharmacy to sell these 7 pills in exchange for a single true origin stone was too much of a loss. The Scarlet Heaven Academy had a black market, and students would head there to sell and exchange items. Everyone was masked in the black market, the only consideration was the goods, and no questions about the seller or customer's identity would be asked. If one was interested, they'd just pay and the transaction was done. Absolutely no one would get to the bottom of things. Ling Han was confident that even if he sold 5 pills for a single true origin stone, there would be others fighting just to buy from him. The reason was very simple, because this was concocted by his hand. He had tasted one, and the replenishing spirit pills he himself concocted were at least 30% more effective than the replenishing spirit pills the Academy granted. Furthermore, These 5 pills were only sold for a single true origin stone. It would be strange if they didn't sell out like mad. When night arrived, Ling Han found a cloak along with a black scarf. After he left, he covered himself with the cloak and scarf in a corner, and came to the foot of a small mountain. The imperial capital was too big, and the academy was too big as well. There were 3 mountains in the academy itself, and this was the smallest one. As soon as night arrived, there would be stalls set up in this place, but everyone would be hiding their identities here. Who knew when this tradition had begun? In any case, the academy did not bother with them, so it could be said that the academy had given tacit approval for its existence. The black market naturally started at night. It was very dark here, the only light came from the moon. There was absolutely none of the commonly used stored light crystal san item used to provide light in the immortal realm. It could exude bright light in the midst of darkness, and one could adjust its brightness degree, which made it very practical. But here, not just stored light crystals, not even a single torch was present. Low-key and mysterious was the main theme of this place. Ling Han arrived in a corner and sat down. He set upright a wooden plaque in front of him, on which was written, "Replenishing Spirit Pill, sold in batches of 5, 1 true origin stone, extraordinary quality." He sat down, but as black-cloaked people passed one after another, they merely gave him a passing glance. Some would even humph lightly in disdain. Those that bought things here were aiming for either cheap prices or rare items. Otherwise, if the price was similar, then why should one not buy it outside? It would be safer. Moreover, if any problems came up, one could still find the seller. Why should they really consider it extraordinary quality with just a declaration of extraordinary quality? Ling Han sat down for 2 hours, and finally saw a person with incredibly well-built figure walk over. Even his cloak could not conceal his sturdy figure, it was really too amazing. The person stood in front of Ling Han, and said, "Where's the goods? I want to take a look." Ling Han nodded, took out a pill bottle, and tossed it over. There was only a single replenishing spirit pill stored inside. Chapter 9-10, Curious Gu Lingyu. The man took the pill bottle and pulled out the cork. He caught a whiff of the fragrance within, and immediately revealed an expression of surprise. This was indeed replenishing spirit pill, and the quality was quite good. It was purer than those that he would normally consume. He poured out the alchemical pill and examined it carefully. Then he nodded, and said, "If they are all of this quality, then give me 5 pills." Ling Han handed over another pill bottle. After that, he took back the previous alchemical pill, and said, "Thank you for your patronage. You can examine it again." The man did not dare to show off how rich he was here. The moment he turned around, they would both have nothing to do with each other. After a careful inspection, he nodded in satisfaction before tossing a true origin stone to Ling Han. Ling Han also conducted his own inspection. This was a genuine one, but it might have been used. Its value was naturally completely different. Both sides nodded in satisfaction. This deal was concluded as both accepted it. When one person had given it a try, there would naturally be the second and third. For the first time, Ling Han had left over 3 replenishing spirit pills, of which he had eaten 1. In addition to the 48 pills from the second round, there was precisely enough for 10 portions. 10 times the profit. This was indeed satisfying, but even if he could concoct 10 replenishing spirit pills in a day, it would take 5 days, and that would be much too time-consuming. Had other alchemists known of Ling Han's thoughts, they would have the urge to strangle him to death. He actually thought being able to make 10 times the profit in 5 days was too little. He had better be careful not to be struck by lightning when he stepped outside for having such aberrant thoughts. Ling Han nodded inwardly. He had earned little because the value of replenishing spirit pill itself wasn't high. If it was a level 10 godly pill or the highest grade level 20 godly pill, then one would know how much could be earned by refining a full furnace of it. He would still make 10 times the profit, but the earnings generated would be in the 100,000s to millions of true origin stones. There was no way about it, since he was still a small-time alchemist for now. "I'll take one." A woman's voice rang out by Ling Han's ear. It was slightly cool, but still quite pleasant to the ears. Ling Han just had the last one left, and he handed it over to the other party. Both sides then completed the transaction. After that, he patted off the dust on his body, turned around, and made his way back. For the time being, he had no intention of spending more time on alchemy. He ought to quickly master and integrate the 6 types of cultivation techniques in order to charge towards the strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier as soon as possible. After that, he would break through to the Mountain River tier. If he couldn't reach the immortal level, he would remain an insignificant ant. He would still practice alchemy. He had to ensure consumption of 1 pill every day so as to enhance the strength of his spirit. The woman opened the pill bottle, and took out one to consume. She instantly revealed an expression of surprise. It is actually 30% more effective than the average replenishing spirit pill. However, the replenishing spirit pill itself isn't a kind of high-grade godly pill. There aren't that many alchemists who would spend time to research and improve the original recipe. To actually be able to increase the effectiveness of the alchemical pill by 30%, this must have been refined using a special alchemy technique. Under the veil, her beautiful face revealed a shocked expression. If it was merely improving the original recipe, it would only bring about benefits for one type of alchemical pill, but if there appeared to be some kind of revolutionary alchemy technique, then it would benefit the entire field of alchemy. Fortunately, I have committed his scent to memory. She revealed a smug expression. Her name was Lingyu, the final one of the 3 great beauties in the imperial capital. However, she had already enrolled into Scarlet Heaven Academy 2 years ago. She did not belong to any of the northern, southern, eastern, or western institutions, but rather the alchemy institution, which would only recruit alchemists. She possessed an outstanding talent in the field of alchemy, which was related to her keen sense of smell. Having the ability to remember any kind of scent that she had caught a whiff of was an extremely incredible talent for an alchemist. If he is that alchemist, perhaps we could exchange pointers on alchemy. Lingyu immediately became excited. With her charming nose sniffing all the way, she finally managed to track Ling Han, and arrived outside of the student quarters of the Northern Institution. At first, she'd thought that Ling Han was merely passing by the area. However, she was surprised when she saw Ling Han entering the courtyard and not come out even after a long time. He was a cultivator, not an alchemist. She decided to wait, intending to first get to the bottom of Ling Han's background before doing anything. The Gu clan was also a prominent clan. It would be very easy for them to obtain information on a student's background. Ling Han didn't realize that he had become the target of a curious beauty. He once again immersed himself in study of cultivation, and pondered on integrating the 6 different cultivation techniques. However, after one whole night passed, he still had no clue. After all, this was pioneering work. 3 days later, he finally attended the class again. As soon as he entered the classroom, he saw that the Luo brothers were crossing their hands over their chests and sneering at him. He did not take this to heart. Setting aside the Luo brothers' background, he could cripple this pair of brothers with one hand. When it was time, Shui Yanyu also came. As her tender gaze swept over Ling Han, she couldn't help but smilingly say, "I did not expect to see Ling Han today. It makes me feel a little overwhelmed." This was naturally a sarcastic remark. She had only held 4 classes in total, and Ling Han had missed 2 of them. This was looking down on her too much. Ling Han quickly said, "These days, I have been pondering the method of charging towards 13 stars of Shattering Void tier. Later, I must consult teacher on this." When Shui Yanyu heard this, she finally nodded. If Ling Han really had been spending time in this area, she certainly would not blame him, and would even try her best to help, but if the other party was just using this as an excuse, then she would definitely reprimand him. Such an alluring woman giving a lecture on stage naturally made everyone unable to take their eyes off her. The men were deeply intoxicated by her charm, while the ladies were mimicking her every move. How was she capable of exuding such attractive womanly charms? She was pleasant without being beguiling, enchanting without being flirtatious. The day's class soon ended, and Ling Han went over to ask her about integrating the 6 cultivation techniques. Shui Yenyu could not help feeling shocked, as she had never considered such a possibility. In the immortal realm, there were countless people with multiple spirit bases. As long as one consumed godly medicine, those without spirit base could even grow one out. Therefore, having 6 spirit bases was really a small matter. Furthermore, it wasn't uncommon to simultaneously cultivate 6 different techniques. The difficulty would be in integrating them. She had already gone through the stage of the Shattering Void tier, but this topic still sparked a deep interest in her. Ling Han had initiated the discussion whether this had any possibility of success, and if so, how to go about it. Drawing from analogy, Ling Han had benefited greatly, and could finally grasp a certain direction to follow, but whether he would be successful or not, or how long it would take for him to succeed, this would be an entirely different matter. Looking at the intimate interaction between the two, the men were all dying of jealousy. Humph. Using such methods to court a lady? It's not too bad an idea, but he targeted the wrong person. Shui Yenyu belongs exclusively to senior brother Zhao. Having the guts to court senior brother Zhao's woman, this brat is definitely seeking his own demise. Humph. Does he think that he is so great just because he is the #1 freshman? Come, let us go tell senior brother Zhao. When Ling Han felt inspired, he immediately left Shui Yenyu, and ran back all the way. Couldn't wait to try things out. Shui Yenyu couldn't help but smile. This young man is really a cultivation fanatic. However, since she knew that Ling Han had really been pondering cultivation techniques these days, she naturally wouldn't punish Ling Han. But then again, what she didn't know was that the other party had opened a small business as well, and was successful in refining the replenishing spirit pill. Otherwise, she would be extremely shocked. Just what kind of monstrous freak was he? Chapter 9-11, 6 Techniques Return to 1. Ling Han returned to his rooms, and began to practice his cultivation in seclusion, merging 6 techniques to charge towards the ultimate limit of the Shattering Void tier. He already had some ideas, and immediately began his studies, neglecting rest and food. Fortunately, nothing much would happen should a Shattering Void tier cultivator not eat and drink for a few days. Additionally, he was still young and filled with youthful vitality, so it was even more unlikely for him to grow weary. Another 4 days passed, and he had already attained some preliminary accomplishment. Yet, he had also caused the big fat cat to go into a mad frenzy. Didn't we have an agreement that you would treat me to meat? You've disappeared for another 4 days again. Are you making a fool out of me? Hence, the moment Ling Han appeared, the big fat cat immediately pounced over, brandishing its claws and baring its fangs threateningly. This cat demon, or rather tiger demon no matter the angle, it looked to be an ordinary cat, was amazingly quick. Perhaps it could match Hunyo in speed. As it waved its claws, even Ling Han could not escape. Fortunately, his skin was thick and tough, while the big fat cat was only venting its temper, and it did not really mean to injure him. Naturally, it was impossible that any damage would be caused. A fighting spirit also rose in Ling Han. He wanted to know exactly how powerful this fat cat was, and thus immediately began exchanging blows with the fat cat. The fat cat was very strong. In pure strength, it had reached the extent of 14 stars, and its battle prowess easily exceeded 20 stars. It really proved itself to be the remaining descendant of a divine beast, as Small Tower had said. If Ling Han controlled his strength so it was at the same level with the fat cat's, he would be overwhelmed by its extreme speed, and the claws found their target every time. However, if Ling Han raised his strength to 15 stars, then a terrifying strength would compress space in a single strike, and the fat cat would be unable to get near him. With a tremor of the air, it would be bounced away, which was very difficult to bear. Shattering void tier, a single star's difference meant the difference between heaven and earth, and the higher one's battle prowess, the bigger this gap would be. Ling Han was sure that if he was to attack with full power, then there was no need for him to land a single strike. Merely the shock wave traveling through the air could possibly tear the fat cat into pieces. This filled him with even more anticipation for the strength worth 20 stars of shattering void tier. After taking out food and feeding this fat cat, Ling Han also had a meal, and had a good sleep. No matter when, sleep was the best mean to recover energy. It once again was the time for the class that was held every 5 days. Ling Han did not miss class, and seriously consulted Shui Yenyu during class. Although Shui Yenyu was not as good as he was in comprehension, she was still an elite of the mountain river tier, after all. She could stand on a higher level to look at a problem, and sort out some of Ling Han's inadequacies and limitations. At the same time, she was filled with endless praise for Ling Han. Encountering such an incredibly intelligent person filled her with a real inspiration to become a teacher, and not just treat it as part-time work like she was doing now. This stupid blockhead, he is obviously my man, and actually dares to seduce women. As Li Weiwei watched, she could not help but grip her little fists tightly. Moreover, the other party is big sister Shui, he is really aiming out of his league. Weiwei, you aren't jealous, are you? Ji Yuner asked, smiling. Li Weiwei instantly scoffed. She was indeed surprised by Ling Han's various displays, but she was the noble daughter of the left minister, would she be so easily moved with how high her scope was? She crossed her arms over her chest, and said, I am only afraid that big sister Shui would come to grief. Just look at that blockhead, his whole face is filled with lust, and he keeps looking at big sister Shui's breasts. Ji Yuner smiled in spite of herself. Ling Han's gaze was very clear. Moreover, though they could not hear what the two were talking about, it obviously had nothing to do with romance. No matter what, this time I will definitely mess with this blockhead till he's scared of me. Li Weiwei blinked her beautiful eyes, and the thought of a prank flashed in her mind. Weiwei, Ji Yuner quickly said. Now, the three of them were partners in a business, and though it could not be claimed to be prospering bountifully, as the various sales channels continued to be opened, their profits would also become quite significant. While this girl had no malicious intentions, it was best that she did not do anything inappropriate and take the joke too far. Big sister Yun, don't worry. I will only make him experience some embarrassment. It wouldn't be anything serious, so you don't have to worry about your little boyfriend. Li Weiwei shot her mouth off. You little girl. Ji Yuner pretended as if she was going to hit her, and Li Weiwei quickly defended. The two girls were soon messing around with each other, causing the people who were watching from the sidelines to feel envious. They very much wanted to join in as well. Jade arms twined around one another, and peaks were tall and erect. How alluring. Ling Han repeatedly experienced realization. As the saying went, 2 heads were better than 1. This round of discussion with her allowed him to profit much, and he felt that he had greatly improved on this path. Furthermore, Shui Yenyu discussed with him as well, saying that he should pass on his teachings and insights to the masses if he were to really succeed, bringing it to a great height of development. Of course, the academy would definitely reward Ling Han adequately. Ling Han did not mind. He could merge 6 cultivation techniques, but it did not mean others could. This was not something that could be done just by passing on his knowledge. Instead, it required comprehension, and if one's comprehension level was not enough, it would be pointless no matter what he said. However, if one's comprehension level was high enough, it would be able to open a new door for him and be of great help. After class was over, Ling Han began to cultivate again like crazy, paying no attention to outside matters. That was his personality. Previously, he would frequently study hard alone for about 2 to 3 months just for the sake of researching an alchemical pill completely. It was precisely because of this persistence that he managed to become the alchemy emperor. Now, he had also entered crazy mode on the path of cultivation. Another 3 days later, Ling Han finally attained a substantial breakthrough. He could simultaneously circulate 6 different cultivation techniques, then merge them together into one afterwards. However, the efficiency was lower, and his rate of daily improvement was extremely slow. Going by this rate, he might need 30 years to be able to reach the perfected condition of 20 stars of strength. This actually was not slow, but Ling Han wanted to seek out his dear ones, lovers, and friends as soon as he could. He also wanted to get rid of his status of a hostage as quickly as possible. However, he had just begun, and could still improve upon the cultivation techniques, so there was much room for improvement. Blockhead. Stupid blockhead. Li Weiwei came, and Ling Han just happened to have stopped cultivation. Hence, he stepped out of the Black Tower, and walked over to open the doors. "What is it now?" he questioned. "Good news, good news." Li Weiwei tossed over a white-colored plaque. It was completely snow-white in color, looking both like and unlike jade. "This is the entry plaque for the Black Jade Pool. You can enter tomorrow. However, you may only use it for 8 hours. After that time period, it would be harmful to the spirit and body. Furthermore, you have to leave before midnight. The day after tomorrow is the time for females to use the Black Jade Pool, and if you stay in the pool and not come out, then prepared to be struck dead at that moment." Oh, time has passed so quickly. Ling Han suddenly realized that it turned out it had already reached the beginning of the month, and it was the northern institution's turn to enter into the Black Jade Pool. Li Weiwei hid her cheeky grin, and was impatient to see how Ling Han would embarrass himself tomorrow. She was really looking forward to it. Remember, the Shattering Void Division only have a day's time, and if you missed out on tomorrow, you would have to wait until next month, she said once more. Ling Han was filled with suspicion, and asked, "When have you become so nice?" "Humph, I was so kind to deliver the entry plaque to you, and you're still not happy?" Li Weiwei humphed. "All right, thank you," Ling Han said, waving around the entry plaque in his hand. Li Weiwei quickly turned around and left. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she would no longer be able to stop herself from laughing out loud. Chapter 9:12. If I said it is an accident, would you believe me? Ling Han had not imagined that Li Weiwei would trick him on this matter. Although he did feel that her expression was rather strange, this unruly young miss had always been quirky, so it was absolutely normal for her to have a variety of expressions. He continued to improve the 6 techniques returned to 1, and every step forward gave him joy. The skies had become very bright before noticing. Ling Han, not fully satisfied, very much wanted to continue his research, but when he recalled the fact that they only had a chance of entering the Black Jade Pool once a month, and missing out on this month would mean he had to wait until the next month, he stood up and exited through the doors. The location of the Black Jade Pool was no secret. It was located halfway up the mountain with the tallest peak in the academy. There was a terrifying great formation to seal it away, and only those that possessed the entry plaque could enter. All others would only be killed by the formation. While this formation was only effective on all cultivators below the Sun-Moon tier, the Black Jade Pool was only effective for Mountain River tier and Shattering Void tier cultivators, so there was no need to use a formation that was more complicated. It would have been a waste. Also, if there were elites of the Sun-Moon tier or Heavenly Body tier that brought others in through a spatial spirit tool, then they would have to let it go. According to rumors, spatial spirit tools could only be forged by Genesis tier ultimate elites, and were incredibly rare. Their value exceeded the value of the Black Jade Pool by who knew how many folds. Ling Han soon arrived at the foot of the mountain. If Li Weiwei was really going to trick him, then this entry plaque had to be false, and he would be attacked by the formation. No matter what, he would suffer some injuries. Unexpectedly, this entry plaque was real, and he advanced smoothly ahead. Strange, had that young mist changed her personality? Ling Han held the entry plaque and climbed the mountain. With the protection of the formation, there was no need for guards here, so it was completely empty. In every batch of new students, there would only be a mere 3, this time 4, that could enter into this space. Added with the fact that there was no Shattering Void Tier elite that had exceeded the age of 100 years old, the number of Shattering Void Tier cultivators of the Northern Institution that could enter this place every time would only be about a dozen or so. Of course, there were also Mountain River Tier cultivators, but Ling Han did not know if they were separated from the Shattering Void Tier division. Ling Han had not asked about that. Ling Han had come very early. In any case, he had not seen any single person. It was either that others had not come yet, or they had already entered the pool, and were currently bathing. Halfway up the mountain, a dense mist bubbled and interwove to form a black-colored cloud. It seemed like fog, and yet was unlike fog. It had an exceptionally powerful effect of blocking divine sense and sight. Ling Han walked over, the sound of his steps light. When one reached the level he was at now, there was no need to deliberately suppress his steps as their every step and move would naturally be greatly different from an ordinary person's. Ahead of him appeared a pool of water. It really deserved the name Black Jade. The pool waters were as black as ink. Because it was calm and there were no ripples, it was like a piece of black jade. It was very soothing to the eyes, and made one feel reluctant to destroy this beauty. Although he was merely looking, Ling Han felt as if his spirit was being improved. He felt light and airy, and had an indescribable feeling of pleasure. Furthermore, all the pores on his body were also wide open as they absorbed the drifting energy that was spreading out. It was as if his cultivation level was also going to soar alongside it. Good, this was really something good. Ling Han removed his outer clothing, and after he was only left with a pair of underpants, he took one step inside. Wang, a wave instantly appeared on the pool waters, giving rise to multiple ripples. They appeared as if they were dancing, which made for an incredibly beautiful sight. The pool waters were not icy, but rather incredibly warm. Just one step in, and Ling Han felt like burying himself completely inside so that his whole body could bathe within. This was not only even more comfortable, but could also increase the effects of absorption. Voila! Just at this moment, not far away, the pool waters were separated, and a person stood up. So there was someone here, and he had even submerged his whole body inside the pool. This place blocked divine sense, and the pool waters were as black as ink, so there was completely no way to see through the waters. Naturally, it was impossible they would be found out. It was obvious that the other party had also sensed someone else had come, because he felt the movement of the waters, and thus stood up, right? Hold on. Ling Han looked at the other party, and the other person looked at him. The two of them sank into a temporary silence. Fuck. Ling Han tossed out a curse in his head, and instantly understood that he had still fallen into Li Weiwei's trap. The person standing in front of him was a woman. While she was not fully bare, she only wore a thin shirt, which completely stuck tightly to her perfect figure, clearly defining every single detail of her body, every bit of it visible. In truth, this thin shirt was not an ordinary item, and even if it was completely wet, it did not let any light in. In other words, she had not revealed any important part of her body. However, this appearance that seemed to be on the edge of revealing and yet not was 100 times more alluring than actually showing everything. What detail could not be clearly seen? The astonishing peaks on the chest. Not only was their size unconcealable, even their shape was clearly seen. He could even clearly see the two small erect nubs. Her round, erect hips, her slender waist, her long and slender thighs. What part was not a work of art, making one swallow their saliva just with a single look. It was enough to become a temptation that would make even a gentleman of the highest order transform into a vile wolf. There was no need to look at the face, as merely this figure was enough to drive anyone mad. Moreover, her looks matched her perfect figure as well. She was as flawless as white jade, her eyes sparkling like stars, and had a beautiful nose. She was stunning especially when her silken hair was dripping with water as the multiple droplets shone like pearls from the heavens. This was practically too seductive, one would feel like becoming a beast. Ling Han took a deep breath, and decided to take the initiative to break the silence. He said, "Senior Sister Shui, if I said this is an accident, I'm not sure if you would believe me." This extreme beauty was precisely Shui Yenyu. Shui Yenyu did not make a sound. She bit slightly on her lips, raised her right hand, and a terrifying energy condensed. Hong, she struck out at Ling Han. Fuck, she was serious. This was a strike from a mountain river tier cultivator, so how was Ling Han supposed to block it? Don't talk about blocking, he did not even have the time to react. Peng, his forehead was struck with a palm strike, and he was instantly sent flying as the terrifying energy surged through. Between mountain river tier and shattering void tier, there was an endless distance. Even if Ling Han had developed his strength to the maximum of 20 stars, it was of no use. This was the difference between a mortal and an immortal, and there was absolutely no way to compensate for it. Ling Han bared his teeth. This palm strike had indeed caused him some pain. One had to know that he possessed a body of godly metal. If the minor levels of mountain river tier could cause him pain, then wouldn't the middle levels of mountain river tier be capable of inflicting a serious wound on him, and the higher levels capable of killing him? Small Tower nodded, and said very irresponsibly, that should be the case. Ling Han breathed out a sigh. His so-called physique was superior to his cultivation level by 1 level. However, in the immortal level, there needed to be an additional restriction. It was not the improvement of a major cultivation tier, but a minor cultivation level. His present physique was equivalent to the godly metal of a minor level of the mountain river tier. In the immortal realm, it was referred to as level 1 godly metal, and following this hierarchy, the maximum limit was level 20 godly metal. Still alive? Shui Yenyu's expression revealed a hint of surprise. The strike she had delivered previously was filled with her feelings of hatred and shame, and was definitely a full power strike. Yet, she actually did not manage to strike dead a shattering void tier cultivator. This was practically unimaginable. Humph, I had initially thought you were a genius of martial arts, I never thought you were actually a despicable, shameless scoundrel. She pounced again, raised her palm, and struck out at Ling Han. Pang! Unsurprisingly, Ling Han was once again sent flying. His whole body crashed into the mountain, and created a hole in the shape of the letter Big One. Thankfully, this was the immortal realm, so the space was incredibly firm. If it was in a small world, one strike and this whole mountain would definitely collapse completely, while Ling Han would have flown to some unknown corner at the ends of the world. Li Weiwei, just you wait. Chapter 913, Gave a Bite. With some struggle, Ling Han walked out of the deep hole in the mountain. His physique was really too amazing. After suffering 2 consecutive blows from an elite in the minor levels of the mountain river tier, not even a bit of damage was dealt to him. Senior Sister Shui, listen to me X. Pang! Shui Yenyu was obviously driven into rage from her embarrassment. Although she had not revealed all, one could still claim that Ling Han had seen every part of her, so how could she not be furious? She had gone mad, and shot out like an arrow. Pang, 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 she directed a series of attacks right at Ling Han's chest. Ling Han had just come out of the deep hole, and was immediately sent flying back, and furthermore, was still continuously sinking deeper and deeper within. No matter how sturdy the rocks and mountains of the immortal realm were, they could not stand up against to the destruction done by an elite of the mountain river tier. More importantly, Ling Han's physique was on par with level 1 godly metal. Otherwise, with such a ferocious bout of blows, Ling Han would have been smashed to pulp, whereas the mountain would be completely unscathed. If the mountain had a consciousness, it would definitely sarcastically remark, "So it's my fault then? What wrong did I do?" Shui Yenyu fully exhibited the power of the mountain river tier, and Ling Han did not have any possibility of fighting back at all under her attacks. The mountain rocks endlessly caved in, and he was also continuously sunk inwards, forcibly opening up a new cave in the wall of the mountain. The main culprit of this matter was naturally Li Weiwei. By this time, how could Ling Han still not understand? Today should be the day for the women to enter this place. As for why he managed to obtain an entry plaque. Very simple. Li Weiwei merely had to steal or borrow one. With who she was, it was definitely not difficult for her to accomplish that. But, senior sister Shui, you should at least listen to my explanation, all right? I am also a victim here, though I did indeed see a lot of things I should not have. You decided to murder me without a second word. That's not right, either. The more Shui Yenyu attacked, the more astonished she was. How could this pervert be so resistant against blows? Was this really a shattering void tier cultivator? Although she was only in the early period of the minor levels of mountain river tier, she was a 2-star genius, and her battle prowess was comparable to someone in the late period of the minor levels of the mountain river tier. With such furious attacks from her, not just the late period of the minor levels of the mountain river tier, even someone at the peak of the minor levels would definitely be unable to stand up against her blows. Yet Ling Han had withstood her attacks, and aside from a sullen, helpless expression, he practically could not be any better. She had really gone mad, she had been completely looked over by another, and she actually could not do anything against the perpetrator. "Heavenly winged divine sword," she exclaimed softly. She had really lost her senses from fury, and actually even forgot to use her god tool. Wang, a flash of bright light flew out from between her brows, and instantly transformed into a 3-foot blade. She held it in her hand, and quickly stabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han suddenly felt a chill, all hair on his body rose on ends. This sword possessed the ability to wound or even kill him. It was forged from level 2 godly metal at least. Ling Han forcibly dodged. Shua, the green blade slipped past his heart, but still stabbed into his body. The godly patterns glowed, and instantly dealt a considerable damage to his body. And this was because it had not pierced any of his vital parts, or he would have definitely lost his life. This time, Ling Han was angered as well. "It's true I had looked you over fully, but you were wearing clothes, at least, and strictly speaking, you didn't lose anything. Furthermore, even if I had committed a crime worthy of death, you should still at least give me a chance to defend myself, right?" When Shui Yenyu saw her stab had taken effect, she immediately pulled back her sword, and stabbed it out towards Ling Han again. Ling Han could no longer bother, and, lowering his head, slammed himself into her arms. If this was a wide space, Shui Yenyu would naturally be unafraid. A careless palm strike and she would be able to send Ling Han flying, then, she would pursue and run this pervert through with her blade. But this place was a mountain cave that been forcefully created with her blows, and was extremely narrow. Even turning around was slightly difficult, so where was there any space for her to deal with him? Furthermore, even though Shui Yenyu's cultivation level was higher, how many real battles had she really experienced? Just look at how Ling Han lowered his hand and pounced at her. Though his action was very simple, it was the most suitable move to make in this place and time. Furthermore, it was a reflexive action that had been taken when there was practically no time for consideration. It was actually born from his battle experience that he had accumulated over the course of 2 lifetimes. It was also an instinctive reflex for Shui Yenyu to stab out her sword. She had not thought that Ling Han would actually crash right into her arms. Where could she dodge in such a small space? Pung! This time, it was her turn to be rammed solidly by Ling Han. Her whole figure was pushed backwards a considerable distance. Fortunately, she managed to activate her origin power to defend in time. Otherwise, her physique would definitely suffer greatly from this collision. At the very least, her beautiful body would be rubbed against the sharp mountain rocks, and she would definitely suffer scratches and wounds. But this was not the most important thing. What caused a chill to run up her spine was that Ling Han had actually pounced into her arms. Furthermore, his face was buried into her breasts. This caused her to almost pass out. Damn, pervert. Even though she was extremely beautiful and alluringly graceful, that was something that she had been born with, and it had absolutely no relation with her personality. Gritting her teeth, she forced the sword to withdraw, and stabbed out at Ling Han's back. This strike was extremely fast and heavy. If it landed solidly, not only would Ling Han be pierced through, even she herself would not be spared. This was her spirited side. What a really spirited miss. With how sensitive Ling Han's divine sense was, he could feel that danger was just a bit away from his back, and a thought like this actually rose up in his head. At this moment, if he ducked into the Black Tower, he would naturally be safe, but Shui Yenyu would definitely be unable to stop the sword from its course, and this stab would cause herself to suffer tremendous injury. It was even possible that she would be directly killed. That was a treasured sword forged from level 2 godly metal at least, so its destructive abilities were definitely frightening. This was just a misunderstanding. The main culprit was Li Weiwei. If Shui Yenyu would die just because of this, Ling Han would definitely feel guilt. With this thought, he dismissed the thought of entering into the Black Tower. He opened his mouth, and bit. Shui Yenyu only felt that her whole body exploded in that single instant. Her mind was completely blank, and there were no thoughts at all. The treasured sword in her hand fell weakly from her hand. It was really sharp. Just from the bit of kinetic energy from its drop made the tip of the sword pierce straight into the hard mountain rock, and it had sank down straight until only the hilt remained. Ling Han could not stop a muscle from twitching in his cheek. No wonder he'd felt that his physique was just moments away from being pierced through completely, so it turned out that the sharpness of this sword reached such a terrifying extent. However, could he keep biting her and not let go? Ling Han grimaced. While this had temporarily solved the crisis, he seemed to have pushed himself into an even more awkward situation because the place that he had bitten was precisely where her tall mountain peaks were. But if that had not been the case, how would he have been able to cause a great enough shock to her that she would even drop her sword? Shui Yenyu's distraction lasted only for a moment, and her beautiful face became ashen, her full head of black locks soared upwards, and her beautiful, water-like eyes turned red. It was obvious she had entered into berserk mode. Not good. If she was really going to flip out, then she would definitely not give up until death. Ling Han did not hesitate any further, and he entered the Black Tower with a flash. He had wanted to duck into the Black Tower in the first place, but to save Shui Yenyu's life, he had delayed it a bit. Shui Yenyu was in a murderous rage. This bastard actually. She wanted to kill him. So what if there were academy rules? She wanted to commit murder. But where was her target? She could not figure it out. Obviously, she had been standing in the way that he would definitely pass, but where was Ling Han's figure? Just at this moment, the sound of footsteps was heard from outside. Chapter 9:14, The Truth is Revealed, Very Helpless. Shui Yenyu promptly turned around and walked out of the mountain cave. Big sister Shui, why are you here? Over a dozen women walked in from outside. They were all very beautiful, and the one in the lead was precisely Li Weiwei. While her cultivation level was not the highest, rather, she could be considered the bottom of the pile. Her identity as the daughter of the left minister was too noble, so she had naturally become the central figure everyone revolved around. The Northern institution held a student enrollment every 20 years, so there were naturally other shattering void tier cultivators. Additionally, Li Weiwei was not one of the top 3, yet could still enter this place, which obviously meant that the descendants of nobles and important officials had special privileges. Thus, it was not odd for over a dozen women to come here at this time. Shui Yanyu forcibly suppressed the killing intent in her heart, and forced out a smile as she asked, am a member of the Northern Institution, so isn't it absolutely normal for me to come here today? Li Weiwei nodded, and looked left and right before she asked, Big Sister Shui, did you encounter some unexpected event? Instantly, a thought flashed in Shui Yenyu's mind, and she asked darkly, what do you mean? Nothing, how could I mean anything? Li Weiwei quickly laughed insincerely. Shui Yenyu's brows wrinkled, and a powerful pressure suddenly exploded from her. She was an elite of the mountain river tier, and on the level of life, she had completely suppressed all the shattering void tier cultivators here. Li Weiwei suddenly lowered her head and twiddled with her fingers. She indeed had something on her conscience. Thankfully, she didn't cause big trouble. That blockhead, he must have overslept and not come yet. Ji Yun'er's expression shifted, and she exclaimed, Weiwei, you took my entry plaque away yesterday. Is there some relation to that? With how clever Shui Yenyu was, how would she still not understand? Immediately, her expression became severe, and she shouted, Weiwei, reply quickly. With such a scare from her, Li Weiwei could only honestly explain, I only wanted to mess around with that blockhead, and so stole away Big Sister Yun's entry plaque and gave it to that guy. Then, I told him to come here today. I purposely invited so many people to come together to see him make a fool out of himself, but I never thought that guy actually hasn't come yet. I'm really about to die from fury. You, die from fury? Shui Yenyu really wanted to cry but had no tears. She was the one that should die from fury, all right? She had really wrongly blamed Ling Han. He was not a pervert, but rather had been tricked by Li Weiwei. But, the problem was that it was a fact that she had been completely seen by him, and furthermore, she had even been bitten by that guy, and she hadn't managed to kill him. What to do? Should she kill Ling Han or Li Weiwei? One of them had been tricked, whereas the other was only playing a prank, yet had caused the current situation. Why would there be men's clothing here? Finally, someone found the clothes that Ling Han had taken off and put away on one side. And there's a mountain cave here. Odd. I remember there wasn't one here when I came here the last time, another girl uttered in surprise. All the women turned their eyes towards Shui Yenyu. I don't know, either. Shui Yenyu decided to deny it even if it killed her. This matter was only limited to herself and Ling Han. If a third person found out, how could she still have the face to live? Li Weiwei was filled with suspicion, and decided to look for Ling Han later. If Ling Han was still alive, it meant that he definitely had not come, but if he had disappeared from the face of the earth, then he should have been silenced by this big sister Shui. Her face was instantly filled with agony. She had only wanted to mess around with Ling Han by playing a prank on him. He would be a beautiful man entering the bath, whereas she would bring others around to be spectators, and they'd see how this blockhead would continue to act proud in front of her. But now, it was great. If this guy had really been killed by Shui Yenyu because of this, she would definitely be filled with guilt for the rest of her life. Although the women were all curious and confused, time would not wait. They still undressed, with only their undergarments on, and entered the pool one by one. Shui Yenyu very quickly left. She had come early, so she would naturally leave early as well. In the eyes of the others, there was nothing odd about this. Still, they could not understand the reason behind the appearance of that pile of a man's clothing on the ground as well as the sudden emergence of the mountain cave. What exactly had happened here? Could it be that those had been left behind be the men that had come yesterday? Ling Han hid inside the Black Tower and could not help but sigh. Although he had temporarily escaped the conflict, and Shui Yenyu had finally found out that this was a misunderstanding, the problem was it was a fact that he had seen the beautiful scenery, and it was also a fact that he had had a taste of her peaks. Really, that beautiful scenery was really alluring, so much so that even recalling the scene made his blood boil and filled him with an urge to transform into a ravenous beast. So big, so round, so soft, and so bouncy, and it was a little sweet too. Ling Han reminisced, which could be considered to be finding joy in his sorrows. What I should face, I will have to face eventually. Let's see what happens when that moment comes. Ling Han simply chose not to think about it, and dispersed the sharp qi left inside his body by the divine sword using the powers of the Black Tower. The body of Diamond caused his physique to recover very quickly. Then, he began to cultivate his 6 techniques return to 1. Bit by bit, he was improving. A day's time passed very quickly. Today, it was the turn for the men to enter into the pool for cultivation. Ling Han would naturally not waste this opportunity. He came out of the Black Tower, but saw that his clothes had disappeared from the banks of the pool. Thankfully, he had everything inside the Black Tower. He entered into the black jade pool, and began to extract the essence from the pool waters. The feeling was very wonderful. His physical body was strengthening, and his spirit was also becoming stronger. There was absolutely no need for him to exert any effort, and it seemed as if the heavens and earth itself was giving him a hand. It was indeed very valuable. Ling Han was instantly filled with an urge to dig up this pool and move it back to the great Ling Empire, but he immediately gave a sigh. He should think about that only after he got rid of his status of a hostage. Power was might. Not long afterward, other students came. They were Ma Xing, Cheng Haofei, and also some he did not know. They were all known figures from the last batch and the batch before last. There were also some descendants of nobles that did not need to be ranked among the top to be able to obtain the special care of the academy. Of course, there were not many of the last category. In the chaotic star's majestic empire, the top-tier forces were naturally the 9 kings, whereas the left and right ministers and the 7 generals could only be considered second-tier, and below them, there were still those 3rd-tier, 4th-tier, all the way to 9th-tier forces. The Academy's exception to the rule only applied to 3rd-tier forces and above, while 4th-tier forces and below did not receive even a bit of special care from the Academy. For example, even though the Luo clan was very powerful, they were not qualified to enter into the 3rd tier. Thus, the Luo brothers were not able to enter into the Black Jade Pool, and so Ling Han did not have to go through another argument. After Ling Han stayed for 8 hours, he dressed and left. "Blockhead, you're not dead yet." He had just returned to his quarters when he saw Li Weiwei jump out in excitement. Ling Han almost could not stop himself from rushing forward and beating her up, but when he thought that he could not implicate Shui Yenyu into this matter, he forcibly suppressed the urge. Pretending to be confused, he said, "What do you mean, dead? You really can't say anything nice, can you? Pay. I worried myself half to death because of you, and you're actually acting like this. What do you mean by it?" Li Weiwei immediately exclaimed, hands on her hips. "Worried about what?" Ling Han countered with his own question. Li Weiwei suddenly began mumbling. How could she have the nerve to say that she'd wanted to play a trick on Ling Han? She humphed, and said, "Nothing, you stupid blockhead, if you had died, you would have deserved it." She left angrily. However, now that Ling Han was fine, her worries vanished as well. Still, she was in a bad mood. She had still not managed to mess with Ling Han this time round. This was too displeasing. Ling Han watched her leave, and thought that he would definitely find an excuse in future to give a well-deserved thrashing to this spoilt, unruly young miss. He had not died from her prank this time, but what about next time? And the time after that? Chapter 915, Senior Sister Shui's Request. Ling Han returned to his rooms, but merely sat for a short while before a knock sounded on the doors to his courtyard. He walked over, and peeked through the crack between the doors. Then, he could not help but feel a headache coming on. Shui Yanyu. His debt collector had come. What was he to do now? Xiao, without waiting for him to decide what he was to do, Shui Yanyu directly somersaulted inside over the walls. Her beautiful face was filled with an air of violence as she looked icily at him. Ling Han could not help but swallow. With a leap like that, her breasts were heaving heavily. It was really alluring. He really was not perverted, but because he had just had a taste of those beautiful breasts the day before, and clearly knew their size, he could not help but direct his eyes there. Senior Sister Shui, for you to barge into the residence of another like this, it isn't very proper, is it? He asked weakly. Then the fact you peeked on the day the women entered the black jade pool is something good? Shui Yanyu forced out a counter through gritted teeth. 2 spots of bright color rose up on her beautiful cheeks, elegant as water, so much that one's heart would melt. Demon, she really was a demon. Ling Han missed Hunyo very much. If Hunyo was still here, she would definitely jump out now to stand guard in front of him right now, wouldn't she? But now, he would have to face this kind of temptation on his own. Unfortunately, her power exceeded his not just by 100 times, so he did not even have the chance to force himself on her. If he wanted to become a beast, he would only become worse than a beast. So sad. Senior Sister, this really is a misunderstanding. Ling Han said seriously. Even if it is a misunderstanding, would that change the fact that you peeked on me, and, Shui Yanyu uttered painedly. How pure and spotless she was, yet her breasts had actually been attacked by Ling Han. This was practically enough to fill her with the urge to commit suicide. But even if she was going to commit suicide, she would kill Ling Han first. How could she allow him to live on free and easy? Ling Han breathed a sigh, and said, I am a man, I shall bear the responsibility. Shui Yanyu humphed, how do you plan to bear responsibility? You can't possibly think of marrying me, right? Then you would really still be dreaming. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, though I have neither authority nor influence now, and my power isn't all that strong either, but in less than 100 years, I will change all that. Senior Sister, you have no intention to marry me, and I have long since had my own beloved as well. However, I can use another means to compensate you. Where had this guy gotten such confidence from? With his talent, it was indeed not difficult for him to advance into the immortal level. But if he wanted to ascend, merely the 4 levels of the mountain river tier would take at least 1,000 years' time, and that was already the standard of a super genius. Any other person would have to spend several 100,000 years to accomplish that. In a mere 100 years, what can you do? Shui Yanyu waved her hand dismissively, and said, there is no need to be so troublesome. My request is very simple. In the time we are in the academy, you and I shall pretend to be husband and wife. Pooh. Ling Han choked. Your thoughts are really too far off the wall, right? Just now, you just said, in your dreams, and now, you actually propose that we pretend to be husband and wife. What the fuck? Don't misunderstand. I only want to make use of you to get rid of a person, Shui Yanyu explained. She did not want Ling Han to misunderstand her. Zhao Luan? Ling Han was suddenly struck with a realization. Shui Yanyu nodded. This was her nightmare that had always been entangling her, and was impossible to get rid of. Ling Han snickered, and said, you have really given me a dilemma. Not only is senior brother Zhao in the higher levels of the mountain river tier, he is also the son of a great general. Do you think I can stand against him? Perhaps our matter will just have been announced, and my dead body would be found in the streets on the next day. You have a spatial god tool, would you die so easily? Shui Yanyu questioned calmly. Anxiety sprouted in Ling Han's heart immediately, but his expression was unchanged, and he asked, "What spatial god tool?" "You know very well yourself," Shui Yanyu said. "Do you agree or not?" "If I don't?" Ling Han probed. "I will kill you, then kill myself. In any case, I cannot bear constantly being pestered by Zhao Luan, so it would be just right to free me of my misery," Shui Yanyu said serenely. It was obvious that the thought of suicide had not just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Abruptly, pity rose up in Ling Han's heart. Just how much did she despise Zhao Luan that it would cause a beauty like her to end her life just to absolve herself from him? He thought for a moment, then replied, "All right, I agree. However, it is not because of your threat. Instead, it is because I feel that no matter how much you like someone, you should not use forceful means." Shui Yanyu was surprised. She looked meaningfully at Ling Han for a while, then nodded, and said, "Thank you." It had been a deal at first, and she naturally had no need to thank him, but it was a different matter now. "Oh, right. Zhao Luan is a well-known genius, furthermore, he is the son of a great general. Why do you hate him so much?" Even Ling Han would have a keen curiosity for gossip. Shui Yanyu thought for a while, then answered, "This man plots a lot and has a dark personality. You would feel like you were sharing the lair of a poisonous snake when you were with him, and you would shiver in fear." Previously, someone spoke behind his back, and it just so happened that he was there. However, he merely smiled and said he did not mind, but on the second day, that person's whole family had been massacred completely. Ling Han could not help but shiver. So cruel? It was merely a few unpleasant words, so was there a need to do something so ruthless? However, that person had only said a few unpleasant words, and that was the consequence. He, meanwhile, was going to snatch prey from the tiger's mouth. He would have stolen his sweetheart, so what kind of vengeance would he suffer from? Afraid now? Shui Yanyu smirked. A bit. After all, the Zhao clan has too much authority, and I am not able to stand against them at this moment. Ling Han nodded. This was nothing to be feel ashamed about. Even if the great General Zhao was only in the minor levels of the heavenly body tier, that surpassed him by, how many cultivation levels again? However confident Ling Han was, he did not think 100 years would be enough for him to turn the tables and suppress the Zhao clan. Even if you're afraid, it is useless. You only have two options. Either you die by my hand, or you die by Zhao Luan's hand, Shui Yanyu stated coldly. She was really indifferent. Ling Han showed a smile, and said, "I won't die." There were so many responsibilities on his shoulders, so how could he die here? It would be best for you to be confident. However, if you die, I will remain a widow for you for the rest of my life. Shui Yanyu declared serenely. Ling Han could not help but feel gloomy, and exclaimed, "I'm not dead yet, all right? Additionally, since you have that kind of preparation, how about you stay tonight and serve in bed?" Schwa. A treasured sword was immediately held threateningly at Ling Han's neck. Shui Yanyu said coldly, "The reason I set up a false betrothal with you is because you're already a dead man. You'll die for my sake, and I will remain a widow because of you. This is my debt to you, but if you want to disrespect me, that would be forcing me to kill you." Ling Han raised his hands in surrender with a smile, and said, "That was a joke. Though we are false lovers, we would still have to pretend to be intimate on the surface, or how would we make others believe us?" Shui Yanyu stared at him for a while before she finally withdrew her sword, and said, "In front of others, I will give you the respect you deserve, but don't think you can overstep your limits." "All right, all right, all right." Ling Han rubbed his neck. Thankfully, his skin was thick enough, or blood would definitely have spilled from the friction. Shui Yanyu felt like going crazy. He was obviously going to become an enemy of the Zhao clan immediately, so why did this guy not even have the slightest feeling of anxiety? To be honest, she had thought the whole night yesterday before she finally gritted her teeth and made this decision. The Zhao clan, what a colossal great force, the mere thought of them would cause one to suffocate. From tomorrow onwards, you would be embroiled in this vortex, she said. Whatever. Ling Han said carelessly. Shui Yenyu suddenly felt her heart soften and said, I'll give you another 3 days. 3 days later, I will announce the news that we have made a private pledge to be married. Chapter 9:16, Here Comes Trouble. Shui Yenyu left swiftly. Ling Han stroked his chin. I got myself another wife again. It was a pity that he could only look but not touch. She was much too powerful. He smiled. Although Shui Yenyu possessed exquisite beauty and was a truly fascinating character, his emotion towards her was simply admiration. At the moment, he was completely engrossed in martial arts, and even if he were to be distracted, it would also be by alchemy. Where would he find time for romance? 3 days. It might just as well be like that they would simply spend the next 3 days leisurely before facing the storm head-on. However, such thoughts of Ling Han never came through. It was said that the Luo brothers had been waiting for Ling Han to sell alchemical pills again. They naturally did not manage to catch him red-handed, which made the two brothers restless. They eventually decided to lodge a complaint against Ling Han. They had a witness, after all, so Ling Han still wouldn't be able to escape. It was just that he had only sold alchemical pills that one time, and the quantity wasn't large either. They reckoned that it would be difficult to finish Ling Han in one move. They approached an elder of the Luo clan based in the academy, Luo Kaifeng, and let him call upon a law enforcement elder, then charged up to Ling Han's residence. The appearance of the law enforcement elder naturally startled quite a number of students, and they trailed behind the 4 people, wanting to know who was going to be that unlucky student today. They were heading straight to the courtyard where Ling Han was residing. Bang! With a signal from Luo Kaifeng, Luo Ba and Luo Lai, the 2 brothers, each struck 1 foot out and directly kicked open the door. Ling Han, who just happened to be cultivating in the courtyard, opened his eyes and looked at the 2 brothers with a smile before saying, Why, have you gathered enough true origin stones already and wish to fight me? You won't get the chance. Luo Ba retorted coldly. Ling Han, do you know your crime? Luo Kaifeng walked in, bearing a solemn expression on his face. He was an elite at the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier, and presently had no intention of concealing his cultivation level. A sun and moon were displayed behind him. The sun had taken shape, but the moon was obviously incomplete. It was clear that his cultivation level was that of the late stage of minor levels. However, it was indeed terrifying when an elite of the Sun-Moon tier displayed his might. All the surrounding students not only felt suffocated, but also felt intense pain in their chests. Ling Han stood up, slightly bowed to the 2 elders, and said, Greetings, elders. Then he said, I do not know what crime I have committed. Still trying to play dumb? Luo Kaifeng rebuked coldly. He took matters into his own hands, acting as if he was the law enforcement elder. Let me ask you, did you sell a replenishing spirit pill at the United Forests Pharmacy last month? Yes. Ling Han nodded, and suddenly came to a realization. On that day, the man I had caught sight of was Luo Lai indeed. However, if he intended to use this matter to pin the blame on me, then he would have to be disappointed. Luo Kaifeng was stunned. He had thought that Ling Han would deny it, and didn't expect that this brat would actually admit it so bluntly. He couldn't help but sneer. It is even better that you have admitted it yourself. Then, this would be proof of your crime. There's no need for even a trial. The law enforcement elder's name was Wei Qianshu. He was somewhat dissatisfied with Luo Kaifeng, but since Ling Han admitted to selling the Academy's replenishing spirit pill, this was indeed clearly a violation of the Academy's rules. Being a law enforcement elder, he ought to impose the punishment accordingly. Ling Han, the Academy clearly stipulates that selling replenishing spirit pills bestowed upon you by the Academy to external parties is strictly prohibited. Do you have anything else to say? He asked. When the surrounding students, who had all climbed onto the top of the courtyard wall, heard these words, they trembled with fear. It had turned out to be that. Sheesh. How could this Ling Han be so stupid? He was clearly the #1 student among this year's new recruits, and had the potential of becoming a 4-star genius in the future, but he would actually risk it all for a mere few replenishing spirit pills. Rules were rules, so no matter how much of a genius Ling Han was, this time he would definitely be severely punished by the Academy. Ling Han, you'd better kneel down. Luo Lai sneered coldly. He had been waiting to say these words for almost an entire month. Ling Han cast a disdainful glance at Luo Lai, and said, "Hold your horses. You are merely a student. What right do you have to be making a ruckus here? Have you no regard for the law enforcement elder?" **T, he was doing it again. Luo Lai was so angry that his chest was trembling. This was the case before Ling Han had made use of the left minister to suppress him, saying that Luo Lai had no regard for the left minister. Now, he was acting like this once more. How could this lowlife from a small world have such a sly mouth? He forced himself to calm down as he hollered at Ling Han, You can't escape your fate today. What's the point of you putting up an act?" Presently, Ling Han was the one in a tight spot. He had no reason to be anxious. No need to get fired up. Luo Ba quickly squeezed his brother's shoulder before shooting Ling Han a cold gaze, and said, "Ling Han, since you have admitted to illegally selling alchemical pills of the Academy yourself, what do you have to say to save yourself?" Wei Qianshu frowned, and appeared upset. "I am the law enforcement elder. What right have you got to butt in on this matter in front of me?" Yet Luo Kaifeng actually patted his shoulder, and smilingly said, "Brother Wei, I owe you a favor for this. Our Luo clan will definitely repay you in the future." Wei Qianshu felt apprehensive. Being a lone cultivator himself, he was naturally no match for the Luo clan. Besides, Ling Han did violate the rules, and deserved to be punished. In that case, he might just as well allow the Luo brothers to bask in the limelight. It was no loss to him, after all. With this in mind, he simply let Luo Kaifeng take the initiative, and regarded himself as an observer watching the show. Of course, Luo Kaifeng was happy to have it this way. The reason why he had brought Wei Qianshu over was because there had to be a legitimate cause for his actions. The Academy had its own rules, and the enforcement of the rules had to be carried out by law enforcement elders. Ling Han smiled disdainfully, and said, "You guys really know nothing better than to simply accuse people. Since when did I say that I have sold alchemical pills of the Academy? Do you think that we are 3-year-olds? You have just admitted that you did sell replenishing spirit pills to United Forests Pharmacy," Luo Ba said, pointing at Ling Han. "That is correct." Ling Han nodded again. However, selling replenishing spirit pills and illegally selling alchemical pills of the Academy are two different things. Also, stop pointing your finger at me. It is very rude, and will make me feel irritated. Luo Ba had gotten extremely confused with all the twisting of the words. Still pointing at Ling Han, he said, "You'd better stop going around in circles. No matter what, it won't change the fact that you have committed a crime." "Pa!" Ling Han directly slapped him across the face. What kind of strength did he possess? Luo Ba, being on the receiving end, practically couldn't react when his face was slapped. The hit directly caused him to lose 3 teeth as they flew out of his mouth. As the slap made its impact, the surroundings fell into silence. This was just too bold. It was already a serious offense to illegally sell alchemical pills of the Academy, yet he even dared to slap Luo Ba in front of an elder of the Luo clan now. He had to possess the guts of a true dragon, being as fearless as the gods. Luo Ba felt angry and humiliated at the same time. He was one of the three great elites of the younger generation in the imperial capital, yet he was actually slapped across the face in public. Even if Ling Han were to be decimated, would it rid him of the humiliation that he had suffered? I've already told you not to point your finger at me. No need to thank me. As a senior brother disciple, I am obliged to teach you how to behave, Ling Han said softly, appearing extremely relaxed. I am going to kill you. Luo Ba pounced forward. He had to personally defeat Ling Han, otherwise, he would never be able to hold his head high in this lifetime. Pa! Ling Han gave him another slap across the face, which directly sent him flying out of the area. You still want to fight with me when you didn't pay any money? Dream on. Pooh! Everyone just burst out laughing. Chapter 917, The Misunderstanding Resolves Itself. Luo Ba was pitiful indeed. Everyone felt rueful. Having received 2 slaps in public, it was like he had been nailed onto the pillar of shame. He would never be able to rid himself of the humiliation. However, this new first-place student was bold indeed. Not only were his comprehension of martial arts, the strength of his spirit, and combat skill superior to others, but he was also formidable in actual combat. However, Luo Kaifeng was just standing on one side. Was it really a good idea for you to embarrass the Luo clan like this? Sure enough, Luo Kaifeng's face was evidently dark now. He did not stop Luo Ba from attacking, because he had wanted the latter to personally regain his honor. Still, he had not expected the gap in cultivation level between Luo Ba and Ling Han to be so wide. As one of the top 3 elites of the imperial capital's younger generation, he was actually no match for a lowlife from a small world. Who would believe it? Since it was impossible for Luo Ba to rival Ling Han, Luo Kaifeng could only make a move himself, otherwise, the Luo clan's reputation would really be tarnished beyond redemption. Humph. First, you illegally sold alchemical pills of the academy. Later, you hurt your classmates. Such a person is not worthy to remain in the academy, he said in a low voice, with his terrifying spiritual pressure immediately directed towards Ling Han. Immortals cultivated the strength of the spirit. Furthermore, he was also an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. The strength of his spirit was many times more powerful than Ling Han's, so under such an impact, the latter suddenly felt a mountain of pressure coming down at him from the top of his head, seemingly about to crush his bones. Only by leaning forward was he able to withstand the pressure. However, Ling Han was well aware that the other party was purposely oppressing him, trying to make him bow or even kneel. Given his lofty and unyielding character, how could he allow himself to be humiliated? Ling Han stood upright, and the godly bones in his body cackled violently. Was fighting against Luo Kaifeng's spiritual pressure. A cultivator of the Sun-Moon tier was incredibly strong indeed. Even a mere imposing aura was enough to make Ling Han sweat profusely, while his eyes were bloodshot, and veins were all the more throbbing furiously. Strictly speaking, it would have been impossible for a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier to resist the spiritual pressure of another at the level of the Sun-Moon tier. The gap between these 2 levels was just too great. However, Ling Han was just too proud and stubborn, could accept being defeated, or even killed, but he would never kneel down to another. The crowd had initially been indifferent, but soon expressed their amazement by an acceptance of Ling Han. This guy's willpower was truly quite impressive. The sounds of bones cracking were clearly transmitted from within Ling Han's body, while sweat was flowing from his forehead like a small stream, drenching his clothes wet. Yet, he stood proud and upright like the peak of a mountain, his spine not even the tiniest bit bent. Who wouldn't admire him? So you would rather die than plead guilty? Luo Kaifeng bellowed. He really had to make Ling Han miserable today. Only in this way could he make the others forget Luo Ba's disgrace of being slapped in the face twice. I did not commit any offense, so why should I plead guilty? Ling Han boldly retorted. Xiao, just at this moment, a figure flew over from a distance. It was a woman of peerless beauty, and appeared to be about 20 years old. She was the embodiment of a refined scholar. However, she currently has excitement written all over her face. Ling Han. Ling Han. She was already calling out to him from afar. Hey, isn't she Gu Lingyu? One of the three great beauties of the imperial capital? I heard that she was exceptionally talented in the field of alchemy. She had already been recruited under the Alchemy Institution quite some time ago. We have an alchemy institution in our academy? There are too few students in the Alchemy Institution. Moreover, each of the students there have always buried themselves in the study of alchemical pills. Indeed, not many people know about the existence of that institution. However, the Alchemy Institution has a special status, so everyone must give them face. Everyone nodded in agreement. Alchemists belonged to a special group with superior status. Therefore, they couldn't be rashly offended. Gu Lingyu ran into the courtyard, not even casting a glance at her surroundings, and directly said, "The replenishing spirit pill which you have concocted was 30% more effective than the common ones. Is it that you have improved the recipe, or have you concocted it using a special alchemy technique? I have investigated your background. You came from a small world, and had just arrived in the imperial capital less than a month ago. It should not be possible to improve the recipe, so you must have a special alchemy technique, am I right?" She said so much in a single breath before abruptly stopping. She then looked at the other people with a somewhat blank expression, and asked, "Hey, do you guys have some issue here?" It was strangely crowded and lively here. Everyone was speechless. Only now did you realize that something wasn't right here? However, Gu Lingyu had just revealed an amazing piece of information. Ling Han was able to concoct alchemical pills. Fuck, he was the one who concocted that replenishing spirit pill. It was no wonder that he had admitted to selling alchemical pills, but denied that he had illegally sold alchemical pills of the academy. How could they not let him sell the alchemical pills that he had concocted himself? The academy had no such rules. Luo Kaifeng was suddenly speechless. Wei Qianshu even snorted heavily, giving the Luo brothers a stern look. They were making a false accusation, which would also be subject to punishment by the academy. Given these words of Gu Lingyu, what more could Luo Kaifeng say? He could only blame the Luo brothers for not having investigated the basic facts before coming forward to make a malicious accusation against another person. Now, how could this situation be salvaged? A broad smile flashed across Ling Han's face as he said, "Senior sister, I need to deal with some matters first. I will talk to you later." "What is it?" "I will help you." Gu Lingyu appeared to be filled with impatience. In her opinion, what matter could be more important than a discussion on alchemy? Ling Han responded with an "oh" before he further added, "These two accused me of stealing the academy's replenishing spirit pill and then illegally selling it to outsiders." Gu Lingyu immediately became furious, and looked at the brothers with disdain. She said, "In the future, you shall not be allowed to consume any alchemical pills concocted by the Alchemy Institution." To actually make false accusation against an alchemist, would obviously make the person an enemy of all alchemists. The Luo brothers became extremely depressed. No matter how highly they thought of Ling Han, how could they possibly think that a cultivator barely over 20 years old who had come from a small world could actually cultivate both martial arts and alchemy? This strike had really knocked them silly. Ling Han coughed, and said, "Elder, since these two people have wrongly accused me, what should be done based on the academy's rules?" Wei Qianshu couldn't help but feel awkward. Had it been another person, he would have acted impartially and imposed the appropriate punishment. What was required to be done would be executed accordingly. However, Luo Kaifeng was just beside him. He would need to consider the reputation of the Luo clan, right? But they were being observed in public. Could he openly show favor towards the Luo clan? Luo Kaifeng saw all this, and said hastily, "Luo Ba and Luo Lai also didn't do anything wrong. After all, they had really witnessed the sale of alchemical pills transacted by Ling Han. They were having the Academy's best interest in mind when they reported the matter to the Law Enforcement Committee. Right, so they could even earn merit based on a false accusation. Ling Han spoke up calmly, if this elder is right, then wouldn't I have suffered in vain? Had this senior sister not come over and testified as my witness, wouldn't I already have been persecuted to death by this elder? To think that I have passed through 8 levels of the Academy's assessment, and have the potential of becoming a 4-star genius in the future. If I am hounded to death, then wouldn't it be a huge loss to the Academy? Luo Kaifeng couldn't stop a muscle in his face from twitching. He had seen people who were thick-skinned, but it was the first time for him to meet someone like Ling Han. Yet, what the other party had said was indeed true. It was just that he was being too brazen about it. Wei Qianshu asked, then, what do you want? He decided to become the peacemaker between the two parties. Ling Han beamed, and said, if you give me some 8,000 to 10,000 true origin stones, then I will definitely forget this unpleasant event. Otherwise, I will fight to no end for the Academy to give me a proper justification. Chapter 9:18, Compensation for Damage. Everyone couldn't help but admit that Ling Han indeed had a strong pride, and his pride was something to admire. To actually stand against an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. It was practically enough to make all of them kneel down in submission because of his courage. But with these words from Ling Han, he instantly made a muscle twitch in their cheeks. Aside from pride, you are still a little fucking shameless, aren't you? Would anyone really praise themselves like that? However, to actually dare to blackmail the Luo clan. Merely that point alone would make all of them kneel down in submission for his boldness. Luo Kaifeng had a dark expression on his face. The Luo clan was a 4th-tier clan, possessing deep roots, and it was definitely not a big deal for them to hand out 10,000 true origin stones, which to anyone else would seem like an astronomical number. But whom did Ling Han think he was? He was merely a weak cultivator of the Shattering Void tier, and if even Shattering Void tier cultivators could extort the Luo clan out of such a large sum of money, wouldn't the Luo clan instantly bankrupt? Yet, the situation now was extremely unfavorable for the Luo clan. If money could deal with this impending disaster, they had to spend it. 8,000 to 10,000 is too much. Luo Kaifeng uttered darkly. You did not suffer any real injury. At most, we can offer you a compensation of 100 true origin stones. Hiss. A great many students had their mouths wide open in shock. Ling Han had really succeeded in his extortion attempt. That was the Luo clan, a 4th-tier clan. What kind of concept was a 4th-tier clan? Even the left and right ministers, and the 7 great generals, could only be considered 2nd-tier clans, so wasn't a 4th-tier clan awesome enough? But now, it was great. The majestic Luo clan actually bowed their heads in front of a Shattering Void tier cultivator from a small world. TSK, 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 what fun. Ling Han shook his head, and said, how could that be fine? If it were not for the fact that Senior Sister Gu came just in time, I would have been long suppressed and turned into dust by this elder's presence. And that isn't considered real damage? 5,000 true origin stones. Even one less would not be accepted. In alchemy, Gu Lingyu was a genius, but in the area of human relations, she was obviously much too lacking. She immediately nodded, and said, after bullying us alchemists, compensating with a few true origin stones would naturally be appropriate. This senior sister disciple was not too bad, she was very cooperative. Ling Han knew that it was impossible to turn the situation around to kill the Luo brothers. Thus, he simply decided to get some benefits. No matter what, he was not going to experience a loss. Luo Kaifeng practically wanted to commit murder. You were bullied? It was their Luo clan that was being bullied, all right? Luo Ba had suffered a slap like that, and now his face was completely swollen, so why didn't you mention anything about that? He naturally did not take Gu Lingyu to heart, but did not dare to overlook the alchemy institution standing behind her. Those people were traditional and pedantic, and had strange tempers. He humphed, and said, 500 true origin stones. 4,000. 1,000. 3,000. 2,000. Deal. With a wave of Luo Kaifeng's hand, a great number of true origin stones scattered out. Ling Han was naturally not going to be reserved, and directly stored these precious stones into the Black Tower. Now, he was only going to get some benefits, but when he was powerful enough, it would not be so easily settled. We're leaving. Luo Kaifeng shouted at the Luo brothers. These two pieces of trash, if it were not for them, what need would there be for him to swallow his anger in front of a cultivator merely in the shattering void tier? The Luo brothers did not dare say a word, and obediently followed him like children that had done something wrong as they left. On the wall, all the students scattered as well. They really had something they could boast about now. Wei Qianshu clicked his tongue in amazement. Gu Lingyu's prompt arrival had naturally solved a dilemma for Ling Han, but even if she had not arrived in time, Ling Han concocting an alchemical pill in public would actually also solve the issue. This kid was really capable of tolerance. It was obvious that he had long since been assured of victory, yet made use of this opportunity to give Luo Ba a thrashing first. Then, he proceeded to blackmail the Luo clan for a sizable sum, and the Luo clan could not even show their ire. His courage was astounding. To be honest, even Wei Qianshu himself dared not become enemies with the Luo clan. Apparently, not only did the Luo clan have 10 elites of the Sun-Moon tier, their Grand Elder was even a super elite in the higher levels of the Sun-Moon tier. Without advancing to the Heavenly Body tier, there were practically none that could match him. Who would be so outrageously bold to dare to take advantage of the situation and set a trap for the Luo clan? Young man, behave yourself. Wei Qianshu said, a hint of worry in his eyes. This time, Ling Han was indeed very pleased. Not only had he struck Luo Ba, he had even gotten a hold of a great number of true origin stones. However, would the Luo clan simply let the matter go like this? Thank you for your advice, Elder. I am well aware, Ling Han said respectfully. He naturally could differentiate between good intentions and false kindness. Wei Qianshu nodded, and left swiftly. Ling Han, tell me, have you improved the pill recipe, or is it that you have a unique alchemical concoction technique? Gu Lingyu's eyes shone brightly. She would forget everything when it was something that concerned alchemy. Ling Han smiled, I do indeed have a special alchemical concoction technique. Can you teach me? Gu Lingyu asked immediately. Ling Han hesitated. This woman had really practiced alchemy so much that she had forgotten all about the ways of the world. What alchemist would reveal to an outsider their alchemy techniques? Even among a master and a disciple, the master would still keep some part secret. Ling Han did not hide anything from his two alchemy disciples, though. Still, this kind of technique was something that he had created on his own, and only he was capable of exhibiting the might of the three-fire guide to its maximum. Though you have done me a favor, you want to learn the three-fire guide just with that? That was definitely impossible. However, Ling Han could tell that this woman was an absolute fanatic about alchemy. It was not that she did not know the limits of decorum, but rather that her whole head was filled with alchemy, and she had completely no idea that some requests were too much to ask. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, then let's learn from one another. He could not possibly teach her the three-fire guide when they had just met, but since she was so fanatic about alchemy, he could have a discussion about alchemical techniques with her. Gu Lingyu naturally agreed gladly. The two of them discussed alchemy techniques. Gu Lingyu naturally benefited much from the reasoning behind the three-fire guide, and Ling Han was also inspired. After all, her achievements in alchemy were not inferior to his, so there was a considerable effect of complementing each other. In this way, Ling Han had also switched from his initial intention of giving a few tips to a discussion between two equals. Without their noticing it, the sky had darkened while they talked. The Luo clan residence. The Luo brothers were kneeling in the main hall. The patriarch of the Luo clan, Luo Hongdao, was seated in front of them, his expression dark. "Do you know why I had you two punished?" Luo Hongdao asked. Luo Ba said, "We have brought embarrassment to the Luo clan." Luo Hongdao shook his head. "That is only one part of it. More importantly, the way that the two of you handled this matter has disappointed me too much. You two actually did not understand the complete situation, and rushed to set up a trap. From the beginning, the two of you had already lost." "Yes." The Luo brothers nodded firmly. Even without the appearance of Gu Lingyu, Ling Han would still have the means to prove himself, though it would be slightly more troublesome. "If you are going to move, head straight for the fatal point. Do not allow the enemy any chance of freeing himself," Luo Hongdao uttered sinisterly. The Luo brothers nodded. "Bar, do you have the confidence that you can defeat that lowlife?" Luo Hongdao asked once more. Luo Ba very much wanted to act forceful for once, but after suffering 2 consecutive slaps from Ling Han, his confidence had also been slapped gone. But in front of Lord Patriarch, how could he admit his fear? He quickly puffed out his chest, and declared, "Yes." His attitude was exhibited, but his tone was lacking in certainty. "Humph." Luo Hongdao humphed in dissatisfaction again. "What did I teach you just now? Hasn't one bit of it sunk inside your head? Putting aside the fact that you had already been horribly defeated by that lowlife previously, do you know the real origins of that lowlife?" "Real origins?" The Luo brothers' expressions were blank. Ling Han was merely a lowlife that had ascended from a small world, so was there a need for them to understand his origins? "Idiots!" Luo Hongdao rebuked harshly. "That lowlife is not so simple. He is the monarch of a country that had opened the sky." "Pooh!" Instantly, the Luo brothers choked out in shock. Chapter 919, Luo Clan's Plot. Opening the Sky. How could that be possible? In the history of our chaotic star's majestic empire, we have never had records of such a feat. Neither of the brothers dared to believe this. Luo Hongdao frowned slightly with displeasure, and said, "If it never happened before, does it mean it wouldn't happen? Then what reason would the word miracle have for existing? Moreover, there may be none who opened the sky before in our empire, but what about other places, then?" The Luo brothers were dumbstruck. This was something they dared not even imagine. Long ago, more than 300,000 years ago, there was a great Sui empire that ascended. The monarch of this nation had astounding talent. He had reached perfection level in the mountain river tier in a short few hundred years' time. Hiss, hearing such words from Luo Hongdao, the Luo brothers inhaled sharply. Finishing cultivation all the way up to the mountain river tier in a few hundred years was really too amazing. One had to know that even Zhao Luan, who was known as an absolute genius, was already over 500 years old at present, yet he was merely in the higher levels of the mountain river tier. Why are there no records of this great Sui empire? Luo Ba asked. That is because this great Sui empire was subordinate to a small royal empire, yet the monarch actually hid his identity and entered our empire. He even studied a few hundred years in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, Luo Hongdao explained. Great Sui empire? Could it be that that person is the one who left behind the spiritual imprint in the 3rd stage of the White Star Tower? Su Ran? Luo Ba suddenly came to a realization. Correct. Luo Hongdao nodded. But why were there practically no legends about him? Luo Ba asked curiously. Because this person actually snuck into the national treasury, intending to steal a great treasure of our empire. Thus, the Empress has placed a taboo and erased all records of his existence. However, the tool spirit of the White Star Tower is independent, and no one could suppress this person in a battle of the same cultivation level. Hence, that place has become the only place that still proves he once existed, Luo Hongdao revealed. Luo brothers hissed through their teeth. To actually dare enter into the national treasury and attempt to steal something. This person's courage was really massive to the point of being nature-defying. The reason I told you of this event is to let you know that you must 100% understand your opponent before you want to take them down. Otherwise, you would likely become the ones who would be taken down, Luo Hongdao said seriously. Lord Patriarch, we understand, the Luo brothers quickly answered respectfully. Bar, I shall ask you again, do you have the confidence to battle with that lowlife? Luo Hongdao stared fixedly at Luo Ba, his eyes sharp. Luo Ba's heart clenched, and he answered loudly, for the sake of the clan, this Luo Ba is willing to climb a mountain of blades, or descend into a sea of flames. Ha ha ha. Luo Hongdao laughed loudly. He abruptly slammed a hand on the table, and exclaimed, good. He tossed out a red-colored stone, and said, this is a blood-tear stone. In myths, a real divine beast was wounded, and as its blood and tears intermixed, it left behind an indestructible aura in this stone. Refine this, and your battle prowess will definitely charge up to 20 stars. At that time, you can have a duel to the death with that lowlife, and you definitely have to kill this person then. Luo Hongdao's expression was sinister. He had not taken to heart a mere sum of 2,000 true origin stones, but this lowlife from a small world actually dared extort the Luo clan. Even he was truly enraged by this. If it was not for the fact that the Scarlet Heaven Academy was there, he would even want to directly send someone to kill Ling Han. But now, he could only go in a large circle. Meanwhile, Luo Ba was elated. The blood tier stone definitely was an ultimate treasure for shattering void tier cultivators. With the boost of the aura of a divine beast, the power behind his every strike would increase by a good few times. Furthermore, this was an eternal boost. Naturally, though, the higher his cultivation level was, the smaller the effects this additional boost would have. Even so, his battle prowess would still be able to easily advance to 20 stars, and it would definitely be no problem for him to suppress Ling Han then. Luo Lai's expression was one of envy, meanwhile. He, too, was a genius of the Luo clan, but he was ranked below Luo Ba. Whatever benefits there were, it would be Luo Ba who would enjoy them first before his turn came. If there was not enough for two, then he would be left out completely. He, too, wanted the blood tier stone, but now, he could only kneel and grip his fists tightly whilst maintaining an expression of happiness, pretending that he was happy for Luo Ba's sake. For some unknown reason, he had a word on the tip of his tongue that he neglected to speak out loud. Shui Yenyu had once said before that the person who had opened the sky would be rewarded by the heavens and earth, and possess an additional 3 stars of strength. The requirement for opening the sky was 20 stars of battle prowess, and added with another 3 stars of strength, he would at least have 23 stars of battle prowess, right? Even if Luo Ba refined this blood tier stone, he might still not be a match for Ling Han. But, they actually wanted to duel to the death? The corners of Luo Lai's lips curved up in a cold smirk. For him, it was a good thing no matter which of the two died, wasn't it? Then what need was there for him to speak up unnecessarily? He, too, was a man with ambition, and was definitely unwilling to forever remain in the second place. Refine the blood tier stone, then immediately challenge that lowlife. This time, you must definitely not disappoint me. Luo Hongdao said, his expression solemn. I will definitely not disappoint your expectations, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba declared excitedly. After refining this blood tier stone, he would definitely become the greatest elite in the shattering void tier, and whatever Ling Han, Ma Xing, and Cheng Haofei came, he would be able to suppress them all single-handedly. Then he would take advantage of his rising fame and propose marriage at the Ji clan. Ji Yuner, that be ***ch, was actually on such close terms with Ling Han. He was filled with resentment. When he got a hold of this woman in the future, he would definitely give her a well-deserved punishment. Gu Lingyu was definitely an alchemy fanatic. The moment she began talking about alchemy, she forgot everything else. Even when she had gotten weary from talking, she would uncaringly sprawl out on the bed and directly fall asleep, only leaving behind a request to continue the discussion after she woke up. This caused Ling Han not to know whether to laugh or cry. You really trust others too much, don't you? Although she was like a maniac when she was talking about alchemy, without any hint of womanly charm, just look at her exquisite beauty and her alluring figure. Besides, she was simply lying on the bed without keeping her guard up. Did she really think that everyone was a gentleman? Even for a gentleman, there were times when they couldn't control themselves. Ling Han shook his head, and allowed her to have his bedroom, whereas he himself entered into the Black Tower. There were still 2 days of his peaceful life left. On the second day, Gu Lingyu discussed alchemy with Ling Han again until he really could not bear her pestering and directly chased her out of his courtyard. Only then could his ears have a moment of blissful silence. Yet, he had just chased Gu Lingyu out when Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner arrived together. Blockhead, my father wants to see you. Li Weiwei had come to pass on a message. The left minister wanted to see him? Ling Han was slightly surprised. Although he was proud of himself, he also understood that he would only be considered a nobody in the eyes of the left minister with his current abilities. He would not even be qualified to get a second look from the latter. Yet not even a full month had passed, and he wanted to see him again. If someone heard this, they would even think that he was being highly favored. Li Weiwei had only come to inform him. With her personality of a spoilt young miss, she would naturally not be going back with Ling Han. After she had said what she came to say, she left. Ling Han dared not slight the summons, and immediately rushed towards the left minister's residence. His arrival was announced, and it was still Xiang Chengyun that had appeared and brought him to a small garden. The left minister was trimming a flower pot, his attention focused on it completely. Xiang Chengyun dared not make a sound to interrupt him, and stood somberly on one side, waiting. Ling Han watched, but suddenly, an expression of astonishment appeared on his face. Under the hands of Minister Li, this flower pot was actually exuding some kind of divine rhythm. Every branch seemed to be the movement a master of martial arts made as he extended his limbs, showing off an amazing technique. He could not help but compare it with the 6 techniques returned to one he was presently cultivating. All of a sudden, he came upon a great realization. Immediately, he sat down cross-legged, and the rhythm of great Tao spread out from inside his body. Being startled like that, the left minister abruptly let out a sound of surprise, and stopped his movements. Chapter 920, Beating. How dare you? Xiang Chengyun reprimanded immediately. Disturbing the left minister would cause all of them to be severely punished. Yet Ling Han turned a deaf ear to his rebuke. His complete focus was on the 6 techniques returned to one. Even if the other man's voice was as loud as thunder or shook the earth with its reverberation, he would not know, either, what more when Xiang Chengyun was only verbally reprimanding him like now. The left minister only spread out his hand and stopped Xiang Chengyun, though. An expression of surprise appeared on his face. This was a state of enlightenment. For cultivators, enlightenment could even be considered their utmost important fated opportunity. What was enlightenment? A dilemma that you could not understand no matter how hard you thought about it during normal times would suddenly be resolved and understood. Or, in other words, you would gain some idea of the outline, or a hint, when it was possible that you might understand completely. The understanding belonged to the individual. There were indeed alchemical pills or divine fruits that could aid one in understanding something, but they would only provide aid. It was not a guarantee of success. The moment you went into enlightenment, there could be an improvement in your cultivation that had stagnated for 100,000 years. For example, in the case of the left minister, he currently was at the peak of the minor levels of the heavenly body tier, but without a special fated opportunity, it was possible that he would not be able to advance into the middle levels in this lifetime. What he lacked was merely a sliver of enlightenment. Seeing Ling Han sink into a state of enlightenment, even the left minister could not help but feel a hint of jealousy. If he could also experience enlightenment, perhaps he would be in the middle levels of the heavenly body tier 10 years or 100 years later. Even if it looked like just a gap of a minor cultivation level, breaching this step was no less than crossing the distance from the ground to the clouds, and one's battle prowess would increase by at least tenfold. He could not help but smile in spite of himself. He actually became jealous of a little cultivator in the Shattering Void tier. However, it was actually nothing good to enter enlightenment too early. That was because the gods would definitely not favor one person too heavily and always allow them to enter into enlightenment. Usually, even a genius would only encounter 1 or 2 chances of entering into enlightenment in his lifetime, and one with nature-defying good luck would have this kind of opportunity only 4 to 5 times at most. Hence, the higher the cultivation level when one experienced the time of enlightenment, the more valuable this chance naturally would be. Xiang Qingyun could not help but look shocked and jealous. The Lord Left Minister actually waited on the sidelines for Ling Han to awaken? What kind of treatment was that? In the whole world, only one person would be qualified to have the Lord Left Minister wait. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Now, a mere Shattering Void tier cultivator would actually have that kind of special treatment, so how could Xiang Qingyun not feel shocked and jealous? This moment of enlightenment lasted for about 2 hours. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open, and he looked like he wished to continue. He had had great enough improvement on 6 techniques returned to 1, but he had awoken slightly too early from enlightenment, and had not reached the level of perfection. Once he came back to his senses, he realized that he had sat down cross-legged in enlightenment at a really inopportune time. He hurriedly stood, and saw that the left minister was presently looking smilingly at him, whereas Xiang Qingyun was wooden and expressionless, exuding an air of coldness that would make others keep a respectful distance. I suddenly had a flash of comprehension, and completely forgot everything else. I ask for Lord Left Minister's forgiveness for my disrespect, Ling Han said politely. It's all right. The Left Minister was still very magnanimous. How could one who could ascend to as high a position as he, and cultivate to this kind of high cultivation level, be anyone ordinary? He cast a look at Xiang Qingyun, and said, "Qingyun, leave us first." Xiang Qingyun was initially stunned, then, he practically could not believe his ears. Lord Left Minister actually had something that he was going to keep hidden from him. Moreover, he wanted to speak privately with Ling Han. Xiang Qingyun was already jealous of Ling Han, but now his jealousy naturally reached its peak. But no matter how arrogant he acted due to the Left Minister's favor, he did not dare disobey the Left Minister's words. He merely said a word of assent, then turned and left. But the instant his eyes swept over Ling Han, an incredibly cold chill appeared in his gaze. Ling Han could not help but feel baffled. He had offended him just like that? After Xiang Qingyun had left, the Left Minister picked up the shears once more and began trimming the flower pot. He did not speak, so Ling Han would naturally not take the initiative to ask. He stood on one side, hands at his sides. After a good while, the Left Minister finally put down the shears, and asked casually, "Wei Wei has been helping you do business recently?" These words could either be taken seriously or lightly. If they were to be taken lightly, the issue would be settled with a smile. But if they were to be taken seriously, "You actually had the daughter of the Left Minister do errands for you, who did you think you were?" Ling Han paused for a moment, then answered, "Indeed, I have been doing some business with the 4th young Miss and Miss G. The 2 young misses are only interested because of its novelty, and think that it's fun. The left minister laughed, and said, looking at the energy that girl is brimming with, it does not seem just like playing around. Instead, she seems to be very enthusiastic. No matter what the fourth young miss does, she has always been serious. Ling Han offered a word of compliment. The left minister could not help but laugh loudly. He certainly knew that these words of Ling Han were not to be believed, but the daughter he doted on the most was this youngest daughter of his, so hearing these words naturally made him greatly pleased. He nodded, and said, "It's rare that this girl would focus on doing something, I feel very gratified." Ling Han released a breath of relief internally. This matter was now over and done with. The left minister would not look into his fault for making use of Li Weiwei. He was obviously letting Li Weiwei become rich with him, so why did the situation now seem like it was Li Weiwei that was doing him a favor? From this, it could see how skilled Ling Han was in handling matters. If it was anyone else, he would definitely be in fear and trepidation, and prostrate himself in front of Li Weiwei in utter gratitude. The left minister once again picked up the shears. As he trimmed, he said carelessly, "Weiwei has just about reached the age suitable for marriage. However, I am very worried, and fear that she would be fooled due to her young age." Ling Han could not help his heart throbbing loudly. Although the left minister had not clearly pointed fingers, he was obviously talking about him. It looked like the fact that he had been too close with Li Weiwei these days caused the left minister to feel displeased. No matter how monstrous the talent that Ling Han showed was, his current cultivation level was really too low, so how could he be a suitable match for the princess of the left minister's residence? Even if there was just a sliver of a chance, the left minister wanted to nip it in the bud. One that can be a suitable match for fourth young miss would have to be one of the noble young masters of the 7 generals at the very least, Ling Han said. This could be considered his expressing his stand on this matter. The left minister was very pleased. This person from a small world was very clever, he merely needed a little hint, and would understand everything. He paused for a while, then said, "Every 10 years, the 3 great majestic empires would carry out a competition. There are 2 rounds for the Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier, respectively. This year, the competition for the Shattering Void tier would be conducted. Every empire would send out 10 people, who would take turns to defend their position. The first one to have all 10 defeated would be placed last, whereas the one that can last until the end would be ranked first." He looked at Ling Han, and said, "You will battle on behalf of the left minister's residence." Fuck, it was obvious he was being asked to work here, so why did the left minister still look like it was Ling Han who had been done a favor? However, he presently had also been labeled with the sign of the left minister's residence. Then, if the left minister wanted him to do something, how could it be that it was necessary to still ask his opinion? He was a mere Shattering Void tier cultivator. Yes. Ling Han nodded. However, this matter involves the pride of a whole empire. Even if I nominate you, you may not get through. The left minister then said, "Hence, you have to defeat all other competitors to obtain the honor of representing the empire in battle." Yes. Ling Han said, but he thought, if I could help the Chaotic Star's majestic empire get first place, would I get some kind of reward? Since the left minister had mentioned that this matter concerned the pride of a whole empire, then the rewards given for attaining the first place shouldn't be too unpresentable, right? With such thoughts, Ling Han found his motivation. "You may leave." The left minister waved him away. Chapter 921, Private Pledge of Marriage. Ling Han left the garden, and saw Xiang Chengyun was presently waiting at the doors. When he saw Ling Han, an uncontrollable coldness filled his eyes, but before he even opened his mouth to speak, he abruptly tensed up, and appeared to be seriously listening to something. "Yes," he quickly said into empty air, turned, and entered the garden. Obviously, he had gotten a summons from the left minister. Ling Han could not help but shake his head. Actually, Xiang Chengyun could be considered a genius himself. He had done his investigation, and Xiang Chengyun's results were outstanding whilst in the academy. He had merely taken over 700 years to reach the higher levels of the mountain river tier. Yet, he chose to leave the academy, and follow the lead of the left minister. With the backing of a huge tree like the left minister, it was true that even elites of the Sun-Moon tier presently dared not put on airs in front of Xiang Chengyun, and he truly appeared very grand, but in front of the left minister, he was like a dog. If he was told to head forwards, he would not dare step back. What meaning was left in a life like that? Ling Han would definitely not be able to do so. Cultivators, in the end, should place greatest importance on their own cultivation. Taking advantage of opportunities to curry favor is ultimately not the true path, Ling Han thought. However, he had no thoughts of convincing Xiang Chengyun. This path was one that he had chosen on his own, so what need was there for others to interfere? He returned to the academy, and focused on cultivating his 6 techniques return to 1. After the enlightenment he had experienced at the left minister's residence, he had advanced a great deal further on this path. He was certain he would be able to improve his strength to the maximum limit of 20 stars in a half-year's time. Another day passed, and a shocking piece of news exploded in the academy. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu had privately pledged love for each other, and were already a married couple. When the news spread out, it could be claimed that the whole academy was boiling over. Who was Ling Han? The majority was still not sure, and only a very few knew that he was the student who had got the first place in this batch of new students from the northern institution's enrollment. He had passed through 8 levels, and in the future, there was a chance he could become a 4-star genius. However, Shui Yenyu was definitely a well-known figure. Firstly, she had already been one of the twin pearls of the imperial capital before she was 20. However, it was only after entering into the academy that she was replaced. After all, the immortal realm was a place where beautiful women were hardly lacking. But if all the beautiful women of the last 10,000 years were to be ranked, Shui Yenyu would definitely be capable of ranking among the top 3. In fact, it would be no surprise for her to be even ranked in the first place. She was as beautiful as a fairy, and as beautiful as peach flowers. She was a beauty who would even bewitch ascetic cultivators with her charms. Otherwise, how could it be that Zhao Luan would speak up and declare that he had set his mind on her becoming the future madam of the Zhao clan? Indeed, the reason that Shui Yenyu was even more well-known was Zhao Luan, the son of the great General Zhao, a genius that could go into the history of the academy. Everyone knew that Shui Yenyu was his forbidden domain, but now, someone actually dared to rob him of his cherished person? Who was this? His courage was really too overwhelming. Then, all of Ling Han's information was dug out. The first place holder of this batch of newly enrolled students of the Northern Institution. Passing through 8 levels. Being skilled in alchemy. Originating from a small world. An emperor that had opened the skies. The last bit of information was extremely shocking. That was because in the eyes of the majority, opening the skies was something that only existed in legends. Even in the immortal realm, there were few whose power could reach 20 stars of shattering void tier, and it was already quite impressive to reach 15 stars in a small world. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it was impossible that they would be able to reach the level of 20 stars. How could they open the skies, then? Impressive, he could reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier even though he had come from a small world. No wonder he could pass through 8 levels and be ranked among the top geniuses. But in front of the Zhao clan, all that was meaningless. Ling Han merely relied on the left minister. Unless he was the actual son of the left minister, what qualified him to compete with the son of the great General Zhao over a woman? Many were waiting to see how Ling Han would deal with this matter. This Zhao Luan had already spoken up in public that when he had graduated from the academy, he would marry Shui Yenyu, and had obtained the agreement of the Shui clan. Blockhead, blockhead. Li Weiwei, meanwhile, had raced over in excitement. Have you really got married with big sister Shui? Ling Han cast an eye on her. Wasn't all this because of her? He said calmly, and what about it? I really couldn't tell. You are not amazingly handsome, nor do you know how to delight women, so what do you have that big sister Shui would fall in love with you? Li Weiwei supported her chin, appearing very confused. Even my maid-servant would not fall in love with you. Strange, could it be that big sister Shui has been bewitched? Ling Han could not help but be dumbstruck. This fourth young miss really spoke such hurtful words. Even if you were the daughter of the left minister, and not many would become hostile after hearing you say such words, with such low emotional intelligence, how many would really be sincere towards you? However, you're going to be in great trouble. Not only is that guy, Zhao Luan, a martial arts genius himself, he also has 3 followers. Each one of them is a genius among geniuses, and he needs only issue a simple command, and his lackey would do this to you. She made a motion of a blade passing over the neck, and on the second day, your dead body would be abandoned in the streets. Ling Han sighed, and said, couldn't you say some good words? Beg me. Li Weiwei planted her hands on her hips. Though Zhao Luan is very strong, I am not afraid of him. Beg me enough to make me happy, and I could step out to protect you. Forget about it. I have not much interest in becoming a slave to another, Ling Han rejected decisively. Li Weiwei was instantly furious. Did this damn blockhead know that even she had to go through a mental struggle before opposing Zhao Luan? The power of his Zhao clan was in no way inferior to the left minister's residences. Furthermore, when one had reached such heights as they, the attitude of the youths never represented merely the youngsters. What if news spread that the left minister and the great general Zhao were on poor terms? Wouldn't that create a chance for the left minister to be criticized? This damn blockhead actually refused so quickly, and was unworthy of her kindness. This was practically enough to kill her with fury. Humph, who cares if you live or die? Now that her temper had risen, she suddenly raced off. Ling Han's expression was calm. When he agreed to Shui Yenyu's request, he had already foreseen the consequences. But, he believed that even Zhao Luan would not dare to publicly commit a crime in the academy. There were still some rules which he had to adhere to. The Zhao clan, after all, was merely the clan of a general of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and not the emperor's family. Counter-soldiers with arms, and water with an earthware one. What was there to be afraid of? Oh, Yenyu has really admitted it herself? Under a waterfall, a young man was presently standing with his hands crossed behind his back. Behind him, there were 3 images of mountains and rivers. Shockingly, he was a being in the higher levels of the mountain-river tier. Upon closer examination, his mountains and rivers were unlike those of the others, whose mountains were green and waters were clear. They were flickering with a red light and exuded a terrifying air instead. Yes, young master. A young man was half kneeling behind him. His expression was both reverent and passionate, as if this man in front of him was a god. This young man that was presently standing with his hands crossed behind his back was precisely Zhao Luan, and the young man that was half kneeling was one of his followers. His name was Zhao. He was presently informing Zhao Luan about the matter of Ling Han and Shui Yenyu marrying each other. He was very enraged. Shui Yenyu was a woman their young master had his eye on, and that was her good luck that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. Yet, she was not only cool towards their young master, but she actually even cuckolded him. She practically deserved to die 100 times over. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, shook his head, and said, "What trouble? Looks like I have given her too much freedom." "Oh, right, what is that man's name?" "Ling Han." Zhao answered quickly. "Have someone send this object to him. If he is willing to accept obediently, then spare his life." Zhao Luan casually tossed out an object from his spatial spirit tool. Zhuao's eyes swept over the item. He could not help but smirk coldly, and answered, "I will do as you bid, young master." Chapter 922, Zhao Luan's Gift. "Ling Han, come out." Ling Han was in the midst of cultivation when he heard a cold shout ring out. He walked into the courtyard and opened the doors to take a look. There were two young men presently standing outside, and they were both in the shattering void tier, but he recognized neither of them. They were not from this batch of new students that had enrolled into the northern institution, but could be from the last batch, or the batch before that. "What can I do for you?" Ling Han was calm and collected, though he already had a rough guess. "That is senior brother Wang Wan. And there's senior brother Zhang Qing too. They are both subordinates of senior brother Zhao Luan. Pay, how could they be qualified? They are the subordinates of the three great followers of senior brother disciple Zhao Luan. They are gods know how far away from senior brother Zhao Luan. Still, the fact that they would appear now means they must definitely be here on behalf of senior brother Zhao." Of course, Ling Han actually dared to try and snatch senior brother Zhao's woman. It would be strange if there was no reaction from senior brother Zhao. One after another, courtyard doors opened, revealing multiple faces. A great many were wearing cold smirks, appearing to be delighting in Ling Han's miseries. This was very natural. Not only was Ling Han the first place of this round of new students, he even managed to seduce senior sister Shui Yenyu. She was an unprecedented beauty, so who would not be jealous? Ling Han heard all this, and made an "oh" internally. He knew that Zhao Luan would definitely make a move, but the latter obviously had not taken him seriously, and had only sent two shattering void tier cultivators here. Was he planning on using violence? Wang Wan, meanwhile, smirked coldly. This guy that came from a small world was really ignorant. Did he think that just because he opened the sky, he had the right to do as he liked in the immortal realm? They would teach him the rules today. "We have come under command of senior brother Zhao Luan to deliver a gift to you," he said. When those around them heard this, they were all puzzled. Was there something wrong with Zhao Luan? Ling Han had snatched your woman, and you still wanted to give him a gift? Ling Han was internally calm, and asked, "Oh, what kind of gift?" Wang Wan and Zhang Qing shared a look. Wang Wan took out a brocade box from his spatial spirit tool. It was wrapped very beautifully, but it was not very big. He held the box in his hands, and said, "Quickly kneel down to receive your gift." "Kneel down to receive it?" Ling Han laughed raucously. "Has something gone wrong with your head? It's a great gift from senior brother Zhao, yet you dare not kneel to receive and offer your thanks?" Zhang Qing countered sinisterly. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively, and said, "If that's the case, then you can just take this gift back with you." "I cannot accept." Wang Wan humphed, and said, "It's a gift that senior brother Zhao has given out, how could it be taken back? If you do not want to kneel and receive the gift, fine. Just take it." He nodded at Zhang Qing. Zhang Qing got the signal, and began to unwrap the brocade box. Everyone was curious. What kind of gift did Zhao Luan give Ling Han? None of them thought Zhao Luan was a person easy to deal with. On the contrary, this genius was an arrogant bully, and was well known for his forcefulness. The silk cloth outside the brocade box was unwrapped, and Zhang Qing opened the box in front of everyone's eyes, revealing the contents of the box. Abruptly, complete silence descended. The item inside this brocade box was actually a dog's collar. The meaning could not be clearer. Zhao Luan was going to treat Ling Han like a dog, taking him to his side and ordering him about. Such contempt. Such humiliation. In my eyes, you were a mere dog. Ling Han, senior brother Zhao said that if you accept this gift, your life will be spared, Wang Wan said with a smile, his face filled with arrogance. Schwa, everyone's eyes turned to stare fixedly at Ling Han. Accepting this gift, he would be Zhao Luan's servant and lackey, but if he did not accept, his only fate was death. Who would dare treat Zhao Luan's words as a mere joke? Unless Ling Han hid for the rest of his life in the academy, wouldn't it be too easy for the son of the great General Zhao to kill a shattering void tier cultivator? What was he going to do? Whether he accepted this gift or otherwise, Ling Han was finished. There was nothing else that could be done. From the moment that Ling Han and Shui Yanyu were entangled together, his fate was already destined. A flash of fury flickered in Ling Han's eyes, yet his expression was frighteningly calm. He looked at that dog collar, and strode out. Was he planning to accept? True, compared with his life, what would dignity count as? Furthermore, becoming Zhao Luan's dog, a great many were more than willing to do so, though Zhao Luan did not consider them worthy in the least. Wang Wan's and Zhang Qing's lips curled up, and their faces were painted all over with as expected. Who would not be afraid of death? Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed the collar. Then, in a sudden burst of force, Pennsylvania, this collar was instantly snapped in two in his hands. He carelessly tossed it onto the ground, and said calmly, "Pass the message to Zhao Luan. I appreciate his kindness, but I do not have the fortune to enjoy." Pa! The dog collar was thrown onto the ground, and a crisp sound of impact rang out. Once again, complete silence fell. Ling Han was planning to stand against Zhao Luan. Where had he gotten such courage and confidence from? His opponent was Zhao Luan, the only son of the great General Zhao Luan, and an elite in the higher levels of the Mountain River tier. He was also rumored to be a 3-star genius. What qualified you to oppose him? How dare you actually dare to break senior brother Zhao's gift? Do you know what great crime you have committed? Wang Wan shouted in harsh rebuke. Ling Han's eyes were cold as he said, "After being brought something like this to humiliate me, should I not smash it? The two of you get out here immediately, don't annoy me with the sight of your faces. You are already a dead man, and you still dare to be arrogant?" Wang Wan said icily. "Pa!" Ling Han stretched out a hand, and picked him up in a single move. With his current abilities, those with battle prowess below 20 stars were naturally no match for him. He squeezed Wang Wan's neck, and retorted coldly, "Since I am already a dead man, I would not mind dragging a few people to be buried next to me." Wang Wan instantly felt all his hair stand on ends. He did not have the slightest bit of resolve to give up his life for Zhao Luan's sake. He had no enmity with Ling Han, and if he died, then wouldn't that be a great loss? "No, no, no, don't kill me," he uttered in a trembling voice. "Coward!" With a careless toss, Ling Han threw Wang Wan out. The academy allowed spars, but definitely did not allow killing nor crippling. Ling Han had never thought he was a dead man, so he was naturally not going to throw himself in just because of a nobody. "Get lost," he shouted. Wang Wan and Zhang Qing quickly left with their tails between their legs. They were indeed not weak, but how could there be anyone that was Ling Han's match in the shattering void tier? "You've forgotten something." Ling Han raised his foot, and Xiao kicked the broken dog collar over. Wang Wan caught the collar, but did not dare delay his departure, his dejected figure soon disappearing from sight. Everyone that witnessed this only felt that though Ling Han managed to be forceful this time, what about afterwards? While the academy forbade higher-level students to make a move against lower-level students, Ling Han could not possibly stay in the shattering void tier forever. The moment he advanced into the lower levels of the Mountain River tier, cultivators at the peak of the lower levels would be able to forcefully challenge him. It was true that you were a 4-star genius, but the academy similarly did not lack 3-star and 2-star geniuses, and they could still torture you till you were in so much pain that you wished you were dead. Moreover, could you stay forever in the academy? Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, Ling Han's days were numbered. Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao summoned Luo Ba, and asked, "Have you completed refining the blood tier stone?" Yes, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba was filled with confidence. His current battle prowess was as high as 21 stars, which puffed him up with pride. That lowlife has become deadly enemies with Zhao Luan, and it is destined that he won't live long. Luo Hongdao said. You'll immediately go and challenge that lowlife. Otherwise, if he died in Zhao Luan's hands, there would be no chance for you to wash off your shame. Additionally, if you kill that lowlife for Zhao Luan, we may be able to get a connection with a great tree like the great General Zhao. Yes, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba smirked coldly. He could no longer wait to kill Ling Han. Chapter 923, An Unexpected Prophet. On the next day after Zhao Luan delivered his gift, Luo Ba issued a battle notice, intending to challenge Ling Han to a battle to the death. It was not an ordinary spar, but rather a fight where only one would come out alive. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, if both parties were on the same cultivation level, for example, both were in the lower levels of the Mountain River tier or in the Shattering Void tier, they were free to spar with one another. As long as one side wanted to battle, there was no need for the other person to agree at all. But this kind of spar could not end in permanent injury or death. Otherwise, the Academy would pursue the offender as responsible. Hence, if you wanted a battle to death, there was a need to publicly make an appointment for the battle and obtain the agreement of the other party before the fight could begin. In this way, no matter what the conclusion was, neither side would have to bear any consequences. However, in so many years, there were pitifully few such duels that actually took place. A battle to the death. Everyone in the academy was astonished. Although not many people favored a cultivator that came from a small world, Ling Han was a different story. He was an emperor that had come by opening the sky, and this meant that his abilities had reached the extent of 20 stars. Moreover, Luo Ba should be even clearer about the gap in power between himself and Ling Han. Previously, he had been on the receiving end of 2 slaps from Ling Han, and was absolutely powerless to do anything about it, yet now, he actually challenged Ling Han to a death battle. Had he been bewitched or something? Could it be that Luo Ba had a major improvement in his abilities, and thought himself capable of defeating Ling Han? Now, Luo Ba had made his move, and it was up to Ling Han whether to accept or otherwise. Ling Han's response was very decisive: as long as he paid, he would fight. The fee for his appearance was 10 true origin stones. If he won, there would be an additional payment of 100 true origin stones. The battle would only commence after an agreement was signed. True enough, this guy had not changed in the slightest. When they heard how Ling Han responded, everyone felt amused. He had obviously made an enemy of a powerful person like Zhao Luan, yet was still unaffected. What was this guy's brain made of? He was really too thick, wasn't he? This time, Luo Ba also replied very quickly, and agreed to Ling Han's conditions. Both sides agreed to battle 3 days later. Ling Han was sure that Luo Ba definitely had a great improvement in his abilities, and that was why he wanted to battle him to the death. Otherwise, it was utterly impossible that he would be giving up true origin stones and his life in the process. How could a good person like that exist in this world? But he was unafraid. Aside from himself, no one knew what extent his present battle prowess had reached. Strength, of 17 stars, and battle prowess was 25 stars. In the Shattering Void tier, the difference of a single star meant a world of difference, and from 20 stars onwards, it became incredibly difficult to improve battle prowess, which also meant that the gap in battle prowess was also incomparably huge with every increase of a single star. Could Luo Ba manage to not only surge up to 20 stars of battle prowess in a short few days, but also surpass 5 stars? Who would believe that? Nothing changed in Ling Han's daily life. He was filled with curiosity about that white-haired elder of the library previously, so he also asked around, but no one could clearly describe the origins of that old man Su. They only knew that he had already been in the library since a very long time ago. Every time they saw him, he looked like he was going to die soon, but he did not, which was incredibly bizarre. He came to the library, and saw that Old Man Su was just like he was last time, snoozing at the same place. He greeted, "Greetings, Senior." Old Man Su raised his head and cast an eye on him. Suddenly, his gaze became heated and bright, but quickly dimmed. He gave a cough, and asked, "Young man, have you finished cultivating the 6 techniques Return to One?" Ling Han was shocked, and blurted out, "How does Senior know about that?" "Ho ho, if that was not the case, how could your strength increase so much in a short 1 month's time?" Old Man Su countered with a question of his own. The old man could roughly detect his strength? Ling Han nodded, and answered, "Senior indeed has good eyes, which impresses this junior." Old Man Su laughed, and said, "However, Junior, your situation is not too encouraging." Ling Han smiled as well, and answered, "It's fine. I should still be able to hold on." Old Man Su stared at Ling Han. After a good while, he finally said, "This old man has a lackluster technique, are you interested in learning it?" This old man was definitely an ultimate elite. He said that it was lackluster, but those were definitely humble words. Ling Han replied quickly, "Please offer your guidance, Senior." Old Man Su closed his eyes, seeming to be napping. Just when Ling Han thought that he was really going to fall asleep, he suddenly opened his mouth, and said, "This secret technique is called 7-Kill Subduing Soul Technique. It lets you use your spiritual strength to attack your opponent, which can temporarily stun them. The stronger your spirit is, the tougher and more durable it is, and thus the greater the effect you would be able to induce in your opponent." Immediately, Ling Han was incredibly and pleasantly surprised. His spirit was very strong, but he did not have any technique that could let the strength of his spirit cause actual effect. Under the effects of the reincarnation tea, his spirit was far stronger than that of any other cultivator in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. He had cultivated the 2nd layer of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll as well, so his spirit was getting tougher and more durable by the day. If he learnt the 7-Kill Subduing Soul technique, then in a situation when his opponent was unable to defend in time, even Mountain River tier cultivators could possibly be struck, and become stunned due to its effects. But what was the greatest effect of that? Being stunned for an instant. No matter how short that time was, the victim would definitely lose consciousness, and he could use that opening to draw the person into the Black Tower. Once in the Black Tower, he was the absolute dictator. So how could Ling Han not be pleasantly surprised? "However, Senior, I have no intention of taking a master," Ling Han said. Old Man Su smiled, and said, "It is only an unimportant technique. Just take it that this old man is fond of you, and thus taught you the technique." "Thank you, Senior," Ling Han declared solemnly. After a pause, he continued, "In future, if there is any need for this junior, I will definitely not refuse." Old Man Su laughed, nodded, and said, "Perhaps, there would really be a day when you can help this old man." Ling Han knew that there was no hatred that existed for no reason, nor was there love that existed for no reason. Ling Han did not quite believe that the old man wanted to teach him this 7-Kill Subduing Soul technique just because he cherished his talent. After all, they had only met twice. But, this secret technique sounded like it suited him very much, so he could not force himself to speak words of refusal. "Come over here." Old Man Su nodded at Ling Han. Ling Han walked over. Meanwhile, Old Man Su stretched out a finger. There was a flickering white light at his fingertip, which he then pressed down in the direction of Ling Han's forehead. This was a vital point. If Old Man Su held killing intent, then with a light press, Ling Han would not even have the chance to duck into the Black Tower, as his spirit would be directly shattered. Ling Han chose to trust him, and thus he stood as firm as a mountain. Old Man Su's finger pressed down. Wang, innumerable characters instantly surged into Ling Han's mind. Each character was endlessly complex, and could not be expressed or explained with words. It was like they were a part of the Tao of heaven and earth, a kind of regulation, and could only be understood, but not described. Ling Han sat on the ground, and could not help probing and investigating. Every slight improvement caused him uncontrollable joy. But just as he was concentrating, he felt a clap on his shoulder, which broke his concentration. He snapped open his eyes, and saw Old Man Su, who smiled at him, and said, "You have already meditated for 3 days. You should have an appointment today, right?" Ling Han was stunned. 3 days had passed just like that? Why did he feel as if only a mere instant had passed? He nodded, and said, "Thank you, Senior. I shall pay you a visit another day. Go on." Old Man Su waved him off. Chapter 924, Luo Ba became stronger. As Ling Han walked towards Thousand Spear Mountain, he was still reflecting on the 7-kill subduing soul technique. With every moment that passed, he felt as if his understanding had deepened, and he could not help but be overjoyed, wanting nothing more than to immediately turn around and go back so that he could study this secret technique properly. 7 kills and subduing soul were actually 2 sections of the secret technique. Minor accomplishment was to subdue the soul, wherein he could use divine sense to attack his opponent and bring the latter a momentary lapse in his senses. This, in the midst of battle, was practically fatal. For example, in a situation when both sides were equal in power, or even in the case when his abilities were slightly inferior, an attack from his 7-kill subduing soul technique, causing the opponent a momentary blankness, followed by another strike with the sword, could decide the victory then and there. However, in the case where the power gap was too big, perhaps he would not even manage to use his sword, and his opponent would have already come back to his senses. There was nothing that could be done. This was only a martial arts technique, and not a nature-defying mystical power that could let one completely ignore the difference of cultivation levels. However, after major accomplishment, he would be able to directly kill and destroy the spirit. The 7 kills were divided into 7 levels in total, and each level was more powerful than the last. Still, it also had very high demands on the strength of his own spirit. If one could not temper his own spirit to become incomparably firm and solid, then how could it become a blade to kill others? After cultivating the heart of martial arts, one would possess the ability to directly injure his opponent's spirit. However, this was most effective against evil objects, such as the corpse soldiers against normal living beings. The heart of martial arts did not have very outstanding effects when causing injury, and was more about control over one's own abilities. This secret technique might have evolved from the heart of martial arts, and had further developed the uses of the spirit. As Ling Han walked, he continued to ponder. Soon, he arrived at the foot of the 1000 Spear Mountain. This was one of the 3 mountains in the academy. Halfway up the mountain, there was a large platform. It was the venue where spars would take place. The floor tiles had all been reinforced, and even cultivators who had perfected the mountain river tier would find it very difficult to damage. If not, there would have been a need to repair it after every single battle. Wouldn't that be too troublesome? Ling Han is here. Seeing Ling Han walk over from the foot of the mountain, everyone began to call out in excitement. A duel to death was a very rare occurrence in the history of the academy, and the students here were all very young. Possibly because they had always buried themselves in cultivation, they might not even have had a single experience of actual battle. Thus, they were indescribably looking forward to bloodshed and death. The path of martial arts had always been accompanied by fresh blood and slaughter. One could not possibly stay in a protected zone forever. The spectators were all looking at Ling Han. This guy was definitely a legendary figure. Although he had only enrolled in the academy 1 month ago, just how much news was there about him? An emperor that had opened the skies. He slapped Luo Ba, and extorted the Luo clan. He snatched the goddess of the academy, Shui Yenyu, attracting the jealousy and hatred of the masses, and had even drawn out Zhao Luan, who issued a notice of death to him. What new student could accomplish so many majestic feats? He's an emperor that had opened the skies, so his battle prowess must have definitely reached 20 stars. On a huge tree stood a young man in yellow robes, his arms crossed behind his back, and an expression of powerful pride on his face. Big brother Yi, what is there for you to be afraid of? You are the greatest elite in the Shattering Void tier of our Eastern institution. You have already achieved battle prowess of 20 stars 10 years ago, right? By his side, there stood another young man. This young man was dressed in green from head to toe, and was even wearing a green cap on his head. 2 small goatees were left on both sides of his mouth, making him look a bit comical. The young man in yellow robes showed an aloof and proud expression as he said, "Junren, you are always unwilling to focus on cultivation. If that had not been the case, your present battle prowess would have already reached 20 stars, how would you still be staying at 19 stars, unable to advance further? You know me. I enjoy reveling among the flowers," the green-robed man said, grinning. The yellow-robed man was called Yi Chengyuan, and he was the greatest elite in Shattering Void tier of the Eastern institution, whereas the green-clothed man was called Mo Junren, and was a good friend of Yi Chengyuan. The elders of their clans were also on good terms. As a result, they had been playmates since youth, and were practically inseparable. Big brother Yi, you keep delaying your advance into the Mountain River tier. You must be thinking of cultivating Shattering Void tier to perfection within 100 years. Exactly how many stars has your battle prowess reached by now? 21 stars. Mo Junren guessed. Yi Chengyuan laughed loudly, and said, "If that Ling Han is very strong, you will have the chance to see me make a move." Big brother Yi, you actually want to challenge that man who has come from a small world? Mo Junren was extremely surprised. How many years have I not moved? I fear I will be forgotten. Yi Chengyuan's eyes looked behind Ling Han. Luoba was here. Unconsciously, his gaze turned serious as he said, "This Luoba is not so simple. Looks like his abilities have greatly improved, and he has broken through the maximum limit of 20 stars. What? Mo Junren was astonished. In the eyes of the majority, battle prowess of 20 stars was the maximum limit of the Shattering Void tier. He could accept Yi Chengyuan breaking through 20 stars because he was very familiar with his friend, but now, here was another with battle prowess above 20 stars, so he was naturally astonished without compare. He should have refined some kind of treasure. He himself should not have battle prowess of 20 stars. There seems to be some god tool that has given him an additional boost, and pushed his battle prowess up to 20 stars, Yi Chengyuan guessed. His eyes were really sharp. Luoba's situation was indeed as he had said. The blood tier stone did not increase Luoba's personal ability, but would give an additional boost whenever he delivered an attack. However, the final effect would still be the same. My hands are itching. Yi Chengyuan laughed loudly. He leaped out, and xiao, he had appeared in front of Luoba within a few jumps. Shooting out a punch, he shouted, "Luoba, come, let us exchange a few blows." In the academy, as long as cultivation levels were equal, spars could be initiated at any time as long as it did not lead to any permanent injury or death. Who would have imagined that Yi Chengyuan would actually make his move at this moment? Luoba could not help but grunt. He could not wait to defeat Ling Han, and thrash him so much till he was only left with a single breath. He would be humiliated in the eyes of everyone, and only then would he choose to end his life. With a disturbance from Yi Chengyuan like this now, he was naturally not in a very good mood. "You're asking to be thrashed," he declared coldly, and delivered a palm strike towards Yi Chengyuan. Who? The movement of his palm produced a whistle in the air. The moment he shot out his palm, the image of a powerful creature actually appeared. It looked like a bird, and was as red as flames. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, but had no eyes, nose, or mouth, because a pair of wings was growing out of its head. This was undoubtedly very bizarre, but this monster bird did not make anyone feel the slightest bit like laughing, and only possessed endless divine might. Imperial River, someone declared in a shaking voice. This was the divine beast, Imperial River. In the immortal realm, those that could claim to be divine beasts were definitely not those that had advanced into the mountain river tier, but those that had reached the formidable height of the Genesis tier. With one attack, the figure of a divine beast actually appeared. What kind of concept was that? Yet Yi Chengyuan was not scared. Instead, he was overjoyed, and laughed loudly as he proclaimed, "You have refined the blood tier stone? That's why your attacks would induce the appearance of an image of the owner of the divine blood. However, this is ultimately just an image. If you want to suppress me, it is still not enough." He gave a loud shout, and brilliant golden light enshrouded his whole body. His figure actually became taller all of a sudden by an additional 3 feet, frighteningly majestic. Hong, waving both fists, he punched out in Luo Ba's direction. Chapter 929, You Are Going to Be a Grandfather. A 5th-tier clan couldn't be underestimated. Being included in the 9 tiers of clans in the imperial capital meant that they were influential, possessing an esteemed status in society that would make other people look up to them. The ancestor of the Shui clan was an elite whose cultivation had reached the middle levels of the Sun-Moon tier. He was said to have reached the late stage of the middle levels, and was expected to go towards the peak. However, it ought to be impossible for him to reach the higher levels. After all, time and tide waited for no manha didn't have that long to live. The present patriarch of the Shui clan was a 6th-ranked official of the majestic empire, and also the biological father of Shui Yenyu. His cultivation had also reached the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier. In the future, it would be likely that he would take over the responsibility of guarding the Shui clan from their ancestor. 8 guards had lined up at the main doors, all of whom were at the level of the Shattering Void tier. Within the entire imperial capital, probably aside from the Empress, other forces wouldn't be qualified to have cultivators of the Mountain River tier serve as guards, as it would be a huge waste of financial resources. Secondly, it would also be too conspicuous. How would the Empress view such a person? With Shui Yenyu leading the way, they naturally entered the Shui clan's manor with ease. They walked towards the study where the patriarch of the Shui clan would be found. "You mustn't let the cat out of the bag," Shui Yenyu whispered to him before entering. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Rest assured. I will be by your side to help." Shui Yenyu stressed again. "That would really be a huge help for me," Ling Han replied with a smile. Shui Yenyu took a deep breath. Then, she pushed open the door and walked in first. "Father," she called out softly. Inside the study, there was only a middle-aged man sitting upright and reading a book. Hearing her, he looked up, and swept his gaze over both Shui Yenyu and Ling Han. He then nodded. "You may leave first," he said to Shui Yenyu. Shui Yenyu was stunned for a moment. She was about to open her mouth to speak when the man glared at her. At that moment, she could only take her leave obediently. Ling Han caught her eyes momentarily, with an expression that meant, "You just said a while ago that you would stay by my side and support me. How could you abandon me in the blink of an eye?" Shui Yenyu glanced at him. He could still make cutting remarks at a time like this. Just what was his heart made of? It was really too tough. She walked out of the entrance and closed the door behind her. The patriarch of the Shui clan was called Zhao did not speak or even bother to look at Ling Han. Instead, he picked up his book and continued reading. At this moment, Ling Han was observing the other party. This middle-aged man was really too handsome for words. At the very least, Ling Han knew that he was no match for the man in terms of appearance. Moreover, for a full-grown man to be born with a pair of peach blossom eyes, it would really cause others, whether male or femelito, be attracted to him. It seemed that Shui Yenyu had taken more after her father, as she not only inherited her father's exceptional beauty, but also the temperament. However, when these characteristics appeared on a man, it would make him appear effeminate. Yet, if they were found in a woman, her exquisiteness and allure would be bone-deep. Shui Zige had no intention to speak at all, but the aura of an elite of the Sun-Moon tier had been set in motion. In such a situation, even an elite of the Mountain River tier would be trembling all over, and not even have the strength to stand, let alone a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier. The suppression of every level in the immortal realm was really tremendous, especially at the stage of the major cultivation tiers. It was said that even the legendary 5-star geniuses could not cross such a domain. In the eyes of others, Luo Ba was powerful to the extent that he could not be opposed. However, in his eyes, so what if his battle prowess was 21 stars? A careless slap and he would be smacked to death, so was there any need to take particular note of him? His thoughts having been interrupted, he was naturally not going to be in a good mood, and the expression on his face immediately revealed that. Others did not know that, and thought that Ling Han was afraid. They all shook their heads covertly, thinking that this battle was probably not going to happen. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and asked, "What about the payment for my participation?" Pooh! Abruptly, a great many choked. "You are really greedy for money, aren't you? Didn't you see how awesome Luo Ba was just now?" Yet Luo Ba laughed loudly, and carelessly tossed out 10 true origin stones, saying coldly, "This is for you to arrange your funeral." Sigh, after extorting 2,000 true origin stones from the Luo clan, this mere sum of 10 true origin stones seemed to have lost its attractiveness all of a sudden. Still, it was better than nothing. If he did not take it, it would be a waste anyways. No one would grumble about having too much money anyway, no matter how much they already had. Ling Han put away the true origin stones, and asked, "There's another 100? You think you can defeat me?" Luo Ba was instantly infuriated. Ling Han snickered, and said, "Rules are rules, where do you come up with all this nonsense? Are you going to fight or not? If not, I'm going home to sleep." "Yes." Luo Ba gritted his teeth, and took out 100 true origin stones with another wave of his hand. This time, Ling Han did not put them away. After all, the battle was not won yet. However, it was only a matter of time. "Can we fight now?" Luo Ba asked sinisterly, the killing intent in his heart boiling. "Just take this chance to win the verbal battle now, but later, you're finished." In the academy, there were also a few higher-ups that had come to observe the battle, though they stood quite far away. One of them was Luo Kaifenga Jr. of his own clan, was involved in a duel to death, so he naturally had to pay attention. There was also Zhang Deman. He was quite fond of Ling Han, and was of a mind to take him as his disciple. In addition, Wei Qianshu was also present. Since the last time he had been dragged along by Luo Kaifeng, he had also become interested in Ling Han. Duels to death were very uncommon nowadays, what more when both sides possessed extremely high battle prowess. There were many spectators, and the students in the Shattering Void tier division of the Northern Institution numbered the most. There were also some from the other 3 institutions, but altogether, they were fewer than the students from the Northern Institution. "Let's fight, then. Where do you come up with so much nonsense? Are you afraid of death?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Luo Ba was enraged half to death. "It was obviously you that had been spouting too much nonsense, all right?" However, the battle finally began now. Haha, he would slowly torture Ling Han, and make the other suffer in his agony for daring to actually slap him. "Xiao," he pounced out, and shot out a palm strike. The image of the divine beast, Imperial River, appeared once more, bringing along a great power of dominance with it. Ling Han placed his left arm behind his back, and was standing in a very casual pose. He waited until Luoba had come close enough. Then, he waved out a palm and pressed down on Luoba. Multiple divine patterns interwove together, forming an incredibly complex pattern. Earth overturning seal. Pang! With a palm strike, Luoba was undoubtedly sent flying. Then, his body split apart in midair, separating into pieces and producing a shower of blood. His corpse landed on the ground, his expression one of disbelief. It seemed like he was wondering why he was smacked to death with a single slap when he obviously had battle prowess of 21 stars. This was illogical, and unacceptable. All around was dead silence, and the only thing that could be heard was the whistling wind. Who would have thought that the previously awe-inspiring Luoba would actually be smacked to death with a single palm strike? Was this really a fuck elite who had battle prowess of 21 stars of shattering void tier, and not a fly? No. Luoba was definitely not a fly. On the contrary, he was incredibly powerful, and exchanged 3 blows with Yi Chengyuan with neither coming out on top. This was enough to prove that he was powerful. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. It was because Ling Han was even more powerful. What kind of battle prowess was this? 22 stars? Actually, the majority did not have much of an idea how much strength could be attained with every improvement of a single star of battle prowess from 20 stars onwards. That was because it only existed in theory and legends, so how could it be measured in detail? Yi Chengyuan felt a muscle twitch in his cheek, and his whole body was covered with cold sweat. Ling Han's power caused him to lose even the courage to issue a challenge. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.